Chapter 727. That afternoon, Ouyang Shuo settled Xiahou Dun and Xiahou Yuan down. The Protectorate Office of the Southern Border announced the appointment of Xiahou Dun as the head of the Combat Readiness Division under the General Administration of Military Affairs. The former head of the Combat Readiness Division, Gu Hongliang, was transferred to the Nanyang Navy Headquarters, which was currently being established, and was in charge of preparing the logistics system of the Nanyang Navy. Xiahou Dun was a logistical general, so he was the most suitable to be placed in the logistics department. Similarly, the Nanyang Navy Command, which was just in its infancy, had the assistance of Gu Hongliang, the veteran chief of the Combat Readiness Division, and its logistics system would soon be on the right track. As for Xiahou Yuan, he entered the military force lecture hall together with Ma Chao and the others and became a student of the same batch. 11th of September, Lingxi City. Early in the morning, Lingxi City declared that the entire city was under martial law. Especially the inner city, no one was allowed to enter. Lingxi City was a Tier 2 county city and similarly possessed 2 teleportation arrays. The teleportation array in the inner city flickered with white light. Ouyang Shuo walked out of the teleportation array under the escort of the Divine Martial Guard. "Wui, welcome." White Birch smiled and led Violet and the others over to welcome them. Speaking of which, this could be considered as Ouyang Shuo's first official visit to Lingxi City. Therefore, Bai Hua had arranged for a very high standard of reception. It wasn't just Qing, Hong, Violet, and White that had arrived. Even Chao Can, Chao Hong, Chao Chun, and the other officials and generals were present. He had given Ouyang Shuo enough face. Even though martial law had been imposed, such a spectacle still fell into the eyes of those with ulterior motives. He believed that it wouldn't be long before the news of Ouyang Shuo's high-profile appearance in Lingxi City would spread throughout the entire China region. Ouyang Shuo's sudden visit at this critical juncture naturally meant something unusual. Some people had long ago predicted that the starting gun of the Great Battle of Mengding was held in Ouyang Shuo's hands and could be fired at any time. Just like that, the spies from all sides acted as if they were on drugs, jumping up and down and using all their means. When the masters behind them received the news, they gave almost unanimous instructions. You must investigate clearly what is the purpose of Don Yu Wui's visit to Lingxi City this time, and whether or not he is already preparing for war. Hundreds of thousands, or even millions of soldiers were participating in the Wilderness War. It was no longer the same as when Shanghai City had attacked a city, which could be started and ended at any time. The military was a matter of national importance. Shanghai City had been preparing for this battle for half a year. The amount of rations, supplies, weapons, and equipment consumed during this period of time had long since exceeded 2 million gold coins. Even Shanghai City was unable to withstand the continuous battles. Therefore, since they were going to fight, they had to win this battle. No matter which side was defeated, it would be enough to cause great damage to their vitality, and they might even be unable to recover from the setback. No one dared to lower their guard. Even the powerful Shanghai City did not immediately start fighting when they arrived at the border. After the simple welcoming ceremony, Ouyang Shuo and Bai Hua had a 2-hour private discussion in the study. Not only was Jia Su not allowed to participate, but Violet and the others were also excluded as well. Only Ouyang Shuo and Bai Hua were present. If it wasn't for Ouyang Shuo's pure and virtuous image that he'd always maintained, others couldn't help but suspect that the two of them were having a secret discussion or a date. In fact, the conversation between Ouyang Shuo and Bai Hua had nothing to do with this campaign. The specific battle plan for the war had been decided long ago, and the generals were flexible in making adjustments during the execution. There was no need for the two lords to worry about it, nor would they be able to. The two of them talked about the post-war situation as well as the arrangements for Lingxi City. In the future, when the time is right, Shanghai City will set up a provincial governor in the provinces above the county level. The governor will be in charge of the military, food, and other matters. The position of Yunnan Province's governor will be left for you. What do you think? Ouyang Shuo proposed the biggest bargaining chip for annexing Lingxi City. The game map would be expanded by 10 times. If Shanghai City could occupy the South Cloud Province, South Sichuan Province, and South Ridge Province, the combined area of the three provinces would be equivalent to the entire territory of ancient China. Needless to say, the territory would continue to expand. If the protectorate of the southern border were to keep in touch with the county level to manage such a vast territory, not only would it be too busy, but it would also be inefficient. Therefore, when the time was right, it was necessary to set up a provincial governor to assist in the general military and political affairs of the province. The authority of a provincial governor in the game was even greater than that of a Qing dynasty governor. This was especially true in the China region, where a province was equivalent to a country in Europe. In the China region, being able to become a provincial governor was basically Bai Hua's limit. He could already be considered a tyrant among the lords of the China region. Di Chun, Lord Chunshin, and the rest did not rush to expand after occupying a province. Instead, they began a long digestion process. Even with their clan's resources, it was impossible for them to swallow a province in one go. What more Bai Hua? Therefore, Ouyang Shua's conditions were extremely tempting to Bai Hua. You're quite generous. Bai Hua smiled, feeling a little surprised. He then asked, what about Violet and the others? What do you plan to do? Lingxi City was owned by the Lingxi Workshop, not by Hua alone. If they are willing to continue to follow you, they will be able to find a suitable position in the future governor's office. If you don't mind, I hope that they can find a suitable position in the territory according to their specialties. Violet and the others had their own specialties. Naturally, Ouyang Shua did not want their talents to be buried. Bai Hua nodded. Ouyang Shua was very sincere. Can General Zhang Liao's position be retained? Bai Hua asked. Zhang Liao was currently the commander of Lingxi City's field army. If Lingxi City merged with Shanghai City, Zhang Liao might not be able to continue being the commander of the field army. After all, Zhang Liao was an old general who had followed Bai Hua for a long time. Bai Hua might seem cold, but he was actually very compassionate. Otherwise, he would not have fought for Zhang Liao. Ouyang Shua thought for a moment, then finally nodded. Yes. After Shanghai City expanded its army again, the position of commander was no longer exclusive to emperor-level generals. In addition, Zhang Liao was a top-notch existence among king-level generals. It was not too much for him to assume the position of commander. It's a pleasure working with you. Bai Hua took the initiative to stretch out her fair hands. It's a pleasure working with you. Ouyang Shua lightly grasped Bai Hua's hands, his face full of smiles. If outsiders were to see this, they would probably think that the two of them were crazy. The war had not even started, but they had already decided on their own territory. It was extremely arrogant, but both Ouyang Shua and Bai Hua felt that it was only natural. Like them, they were all proud people deep in their bones. After preparing for so long, Ouyang Shua never thought that he would fail. At 11 in the morning, Ouyang Shua and Bai Hua left the study to attend a press conference. In the hall, the major media outlets, led by the Daily News, were already waiting. At the press conference, Bai Hua announced a big piece of news. From today onwards, Lingxi City will represent the entirety of Kunming County and be incorporated into the Southern Border Protectorate manor, Bai Hua said casually. Wow! Even if these reporters were mentally prepared, they did not think that it would be such explosive news. They had only received a notice that Lingxi City would have a major announcement today. Seeing Ouyang Shua appear in Lingxi City, the reporters could only think of the battle with Meng Ding. Who would have thought that they would hear such news? Lingxi City will be merged with the Nanjing Protectorate? Today is not April Fool's Day. The reporters were on the verge of collapsing. Lingxi City is the overlord of the wilderness. How is that possible? The reporters began to ask. May I ask Lord Bai Hua, why did you suddenly make this decision? It's not really sudden. Bai Hua did not fall for it. The cooperation between Lingxi City and Shanghai City has long begun. This time, Lord Wui's visit to Lingxi City is for the final confirmation. Is it convenient to reveal the specific details of the cooperation? Was Lingxi City forced to be annexed because of the pressure from Shanghai City? The reporters did not give up. The details of the cooperation are confidential and cannot be disclosed to the public. Bai Hua's expression did not change. The cooperation between Lingxi City and Shanghai City is a win-win process. There is no coercion. Everyone should know that this is not the first internal merger of the Shanghai Alliance. As early as 2 years ago, Mulan County in the Lianzhou Basin was annexed to Shanghai City. The original Mulan County Lord, Mulan Yu, is now the Zhen and county governor. Ouyang Shua did not care what the reporters were thinking and patiently explained. The cooperation between Shanghai City and Lingxi City is based on the principle of mutual development. Ouyang Shua's interruption made the other party speechless. Mulan Yu had been promoted from an inconspicuous lord all the way to the county governor. No one could say that Ouyang Shua was maliciously deceiving his allies and harboring evil intentions. Just think about the other lords in the Lianzhou Basin. They had long disappeared. Only Mulan Yu was still active in the wilderness, and her radiance was even more dazzling. Ouyang Shua's words of win-win were not just empty words. It was precisely because of this that Ouyang Shua was able to gain the trust of Bai Hua and the others. A good reputation was sometimes even more powerful than an army. Lord Wui, may I ask if this merger is related to the upcoming Battle of Mengding? The clever reporters cleverly changed the topic to the upcoming battle. Ouyang Shua smiled and said confidently, the cooperation between Lingxi City and Shanghai City has already been decided 3 months ago. It has nothing to do with the Battle of Mengding. Of course, Ouyang Shua changed the topic. After the merger, the two armies will be under unified command. This way, it will be beneficial for the upcoming battle. We do not deny this point. Does this mean that Lord Wui is very confident about this battle? The last question was asked by a reporter from the Daily News. He was also an old friend of Shanghai City. Ouyang Shua stood up and faced the crowd of reporters. His gaze was firm. I believe that Shanghai City will win. Yunnan City took the initiative to provoke Shanghai City, so they must pay the price in blood. The press conference came to an end with Ouyang Shua's unyielding words. Chapter 728. On the eve of the war, the news of Lingxi City being annexed by Shanghai City caused a huge uproar in the wilderness. With the annexation of Lingxi City, the two alliances in the China region seemed to be walking on two completely different paths. Shanghai Alliance continued to devour each other and gradually became one. Yin Huang Alliance, on the other hand, blossomed more and more brilliantly. The underground casinos in the 9 Great King cities opened specially for the Mengding War. The odds of betting on Shanghai City was 1-3, while Yunnan City was 1-5. Once the news came out, all the casinos tacitly changed the odds of Shanghai City to 1-2, while Yunnan City was 1-6, widening the gap even further. Obviously, the players were becoming more pessimistic about Yunnan City. At this moment, Yunnan City also made a big move. That afternoon, Dichen appeared in Tengchong City and announced the alliance between Tengchong City and Handan City. If necessary, Handan City will send troops to assist Tengchong City. At the alliance meeting, Dichen said such harsh words, as if to counter Ouyang Shua's previous argument. This made the onlookers even more excited. The players were wondering if this war would turn into a chaotic war in the entire China region. Those who were watching a good show would not mind it getting bigger. Ouyang Shua only smiled when he heard the news. Yin Huang Alliance had made a few small moves. How could Ouyang Shua not guard against them in this war? It would be fine if Di Chun and the rest did not make a fuss, but if they really sent reinforcements to Yunnan City, it would not end well for them. 12th of September, Lingxi City. As Lingxi City was annexed to Shanghai City, Chao Chun and Chao Hong finally came under Ouyang Shua's banner, which made them not know whether to laugh or cry. After the greeting, the two were sent to Shanghai City to train with Xiahou Yuan and the rest. Cao Cao had 5 generals under him. They were Front General Zhang Liao, Right General Eugene, Left General Eugene, West General Zhang He, and Rear General Su Huang. Other than the 5 generals, Xiahou Shi and the Chao surnamed Chao were ranked higher than them, including Xiahou Dun, Chao Run, Chao Chun, Xiahou Yuan, Chao Hong, Chao Zhen, Chao Xiu, and Xiahou Shang. Among the 8 Tiger Riders, Xiahou Dun was the highest, followed by Chao Ren. Unfortunately, Chao Ren died in the Battle of Chibi. Chao Chun and Chao Hong were the commanders of Cao Cao's most elite troops, the Tiger Leopard Cavalry. They could be considered as Cao Cao's most trusted generals. Especially Chao Chun, he was the first commander of the Tiger Leopard Cavalry. Therefore, in Cao Cao's organization, the Chao brothers' status was much higher than Zhang Liao's. It just so happened that Zhang Liao was the leader of the generals in Lingxi City, causing Chao Chun and his brother to feel very awkward. This cultivation trip had helped them out of their predicament. With the addition of Chao Chun and his brother, the special advanced class of the military lecture hall had expanded to 15 people. The lineup was huge and luxurious, and it was probably unprecedented. After he finished making arrangements for Chao Chun and Chao Chun, Ouyang Shua immediately led the Divine Martial Guard to the front lines of the war to inspect Spirit Rhino City's field army. Of course, they had already been reorganized into the 3rd Legion of the Dragon Stallion Army. As for Lingxi City, apart from Bai Hua being officially appointed as the Kunming County Governor by Ouyang Shua, everything else remained the same. The structure of Lingxi City was the same as that of Shanghai City, so there was no need to change it. At the same time, in order to calm the hearts of the people, Ouyang Shua naturally wouldn't arbitrarily change the positions of the officials. If he really wanted to do so, he would have to wait until the war was over. What he needed to do now was to report the names of the officials of Kunming County to the General Administration of Administration. In addition, the salary system of Kunming County had to be aligned with that of Shanghai City, including the system of laws. This sort of meticulous work would naturally be handled by the 4 directors of the Southern Border Protectorate, so there was no need for Ouyang Shua to worry about it. The major change in the structure of Kunming County was the abolition of the Lingxi City Military Office. A portion of the officers would be absorbed into the General Administration of Military Affairs, while another portion would be absorbed into the Nanyang Navy, which was still in the process of being reorganized. Before leaving, Ouyang Shua had already instructed the General Administration of Finance to use the name of the Southern Border Protectorate to increase the salaries of the 1,000 officials of Kunming County by 2 months. This little trick to win the hearts of the people was still very necessary. For the commoners of Kunming County, it was still somewhat difficult for them to adapt to having a new master overnight. As the saying went, it was better to be the head of a chicken than the tail of a phoenix. There were probably quite a few people in Kunming County who were dissatisfied with this arrangement or did not understand it. All of this required time to adjust, as well as a lot of meticulous and solid work from the Protectorate. Wei Yong had already proposed to use the opportunity of promoting the Codex in Kunming County to reshuffle the cards. At the press conference, Baiwa and Ouyang Shua had declared that the merger between the 2 sides had already been underway. While Ouyang Shua was still on the Great Voyage, the officials of both sides had already gone through several rounds of negotiations. Just the records of the negotiations had piled up to the height of a man. It was precisely because of the foreshadowing that Ouyang Shua and Baiwa had been able to make a decision on the spot. Otherwise, how could such a big matter be settled with just a few words from the 2 of them? The Southern Border Protectorate had a complete plan for how to integrate Kunming County into the system of Shanghai City. What they needed to do now was follow the prescribed order. Baiwa would personally oversee Lingxi City and cooperate with the Southern Border Protectorate in the handover of power. 3 days later, Ouyang Shua's party arrived at the camp of the 3rd Corps. This general, Zhang Liao, pays respects to Lord. In the central tent, Zhang Liao led the division commanders of the 3rd Corps and paid their respects to Ouyang Shua. The lack of enthusiasm in their salutes made Ouyang Shua realize that winning the loyalty of these generals on the battlefield was not something that could be resolved with a simple certificate of appointment. Ouyang Shua did not mind, and indicated for Jia Su to read out the certificates of appointment for Zhang Liao and the others. Zhang Liao was officially appointed the commander of the 3rd Corps of the Dragon Stallion Army, at the same time conferred the title of 4th-rank General of the West. The other division commanders were also conferred the title of fifth-rank general. In the tent, Ouyang Shua personally placed the golden dragon insignia that represented a fourth-rank general on Zhang Liao's head. The exquisite golden dragon insignia was untainted by even a speck of dust and represented the supreme honor of a soldier. Finally, Ouyang Shua personally bestowed the banner of the Third Corps on Zhang Liao and solemnly said, "General Zhang Liao, I hope that you will continue to lead the Dragon Stallion Army's Third Corps on the battlefield, bravely slaying the enemy and spreading the glory of the Golden Dragon banner." Zhang Liao solemnly received the banner, a hint of excitement in his eyes. "I will definitely not disappoint, Lord." The Golden Dragon insignia of the 5 division commanders were worn by Jiasu. For a moment, the tent flashed with golden light. By wearing the same Golden Dragon insignia, the generals felt a sense of closeness to Shanghai City for the first time. This kind of supreme honor was not something that a certificate of appointment or money could compare to. "Salute!" Zhang Liao took the lead and saluted Lord once more. Chua! All the generals performed a standard military salute in unison. At this moment, the Third Corps had finally begun to submit, finally acknowledging Ouyang Shua's existence. Ouyang Shua silently nodded. At least his efforts had not been in vain. "Generals, I have a secret order to read out." Ouyang Shua returned to his seat of honor, exuding a dignified aura. "We solemnly obey Lord's order." Zhang Liao sensed that something was amiss from Lord's expression, and his heart shivered as he subconsciously focused on listening. The atmosphere in the tent instantly turned solemn. Ouyang Shua revealed the true goal of this military campaign. Zhang Liao's eyes instantly went wide. This plan was completely different from what he had originally thought. In other words, all of their recent actions had been a smokescreen for the enemy. Simply absurd, but when he thought about it, it was extremely frightening. Shanghai City's General Administration of Military Affairs was really a group of evildoers to think of such a bold military plan. If it was really carried out, the 4 major city-states would be fooled. After Ouyang Shua finished speaking, his gaze swept across the generals. "This is the entire plan. Do you understand?" "Understood." "Since you understand, then, from tomorrow onwards, carry out the plan. Remember, without military orders, do not act on your own. If anyone disobeys, don't blame me for being ruthless." Ouyang Shua solemnly instructed. In an instant, an oppressive feeling like a sea of blood filled the tent. Huge blood bubbles emerged from the sea of blood, and tens of thousands of skeletons bobbed up and down in the sea. Among the skeletons, there were not only human bones, but also giant deep-sea beasts. Countless ghosts floated on the sea, including soldiers, generals, and innocent people. Without exception, they were all dead souls that had died in the hands of Shanghai City, and they let out waves of incomparably mournful cries on the sea. Zhang Liao and the others were horrified when they saw this. Even though they had been through hundreds of battles, in front of this sea of blood, they could not help but tremble unconsciously. How many people did they have to kill to have such a bloody aura? In the game, there was not only luck, but also karma. As long as someone died in the Shanghai City Army, regardless of whether it was Ouyang Shua's doing or not, he would have a share. After several years of accumulation, one could imagine the mountain of corpses and the sea of blood that had formed. It was foreseeable that this sea of blood would continue to expand, and there seemed to be no end to it. This was the first time that Ouyang Shua had displayed the pressure of the sea of blood in front of them. Zhang Liao and the other generals then realized that the ruler in front of them was not their previous master, Bai Hua. She was not a weak woman, but an iron-blooded commander who had traversed mountains of corpses and seas of blood, a supreme emperor. In the midst of their awe, a trace of inexplicable excitement flashed in the hearts of the generals. They could clearly feel the different changes that would occur after merging with Shanghai City. The next day, the 3rd Legion began to move. Strangely, in the next few days, the army frequently moved out, assuming a posture as if they were ready to fight at any time. However, they did not really attack. In any case, the Third Legion did not cross the border. This puzzled the Yunnan city-state army, who were on standby, and they were not prepared to attack until they knew the enemy's purpose. The Third Legion told the public that the ruler had just arrived and wanted to inspect the Third Legion. In a short span of 3 days, the Third Legion had conducted a large military parade and a large-scale military exercise. The problem was that it was somewhat inexplicable to conduct a military exercise at this time. Chapter 729. What does Shanghai City want? Yunnan City Alliance's command center and the city's lords were all present. Everyone was discussing the enemy's abnormal behavior. The Shanghai City Army's inaction made them feel very aggrieved. Could it be that the enemy is deliberately lulling us into letting down our guard before launching a surprise attack? That's possible. Our enemy is very cunning. Qin Fan nodded in agreement. I have already ordered the frontline troops to remain vigilant and prepare for battle. Hearing this, one of the lords of Mengding Commandery explained, I don't think it's that simple. Mengding Commandery is mainly hilly and is not suitable for cavalry to charge on a large scale. Even if the enemy launched a surprise attack, it would have little effect. It's too petty of them to set up a diversion just for a little advantage. It's not like Shanghai City style. I think there must be some other reason behind this. Then what could it be? The lords felt like their heads were about to explode. They can't be messing with us, right? Who cares what their motives are? In my opinion, we might as well take the initiative to attack. Someone suggested. No. Almost at the same time, 5 or 6 lords objected. Qin Fan was also one of them. If we resist Shanghai City's attack, not only will we receive help from the other cities, but even Handan City has promised to send troops. But if we attack Shanghai City, the nature of the situation will change. At the very least, the other cities will not help us restrain Shanghai City's army. This won't do, that won't do. What should we do? Let's wait and see. That's right. The most important thing now is to calm down and not make any mistakes. I think Shanghai City will not let this drag on. They will definitely make a big move in the near future. Qin Fan concluded. The meeting hall fell into silence. This silence was the last calm before the storm. September 17th, Lingxi City. The stars in the night sky were shrouded by dark clouds. It was past curfew, and the city was silent. Other than the bailiffs patrolling the streets and the night watchmen, there was no one else alive. Occasionally, a stray cat would leap over the eaves and step on the roof tiles, causing them to bark. In the blink of an eye, the stray cat jumped into a courtyard and disappeared. The night returned to silence. At this moment, the east gate, which was supposed to be tightly shut, was quietly opened from the inside, and the drawbridge was lowered. On the official road outside the city gate, an armored army had appeared out of nowhere. As far as the eye could see, the army stretched for over 5 kilometers. They were clad in clanking armor, and their swords and spears stood in great numbers. There was no end to them. The army entered the city in a silent formation. Following the streets that had been specially cleared, they advanced quietly and quickly all the way to the teleportation array in the outer city. In order to prevent spies, according to the rules, the outer city's teleportation portal would stop working after the curfew. Therefore, whenever it was time for the curfew, there would be no one around the teleportation portal, which was the busiest during the day. No one would take the risk of being inspected and come to the teleportation formation to enjoy the scenery. Tonight, however, was different. The teleportation array that had already stopped emitted a mysterious blue light once again. The army did not stop at all. They directly entered the teleportation array and disappeared. Because there were too many people being teleported, the entire process lasted for 2 hours before coming to an end. Following which, the East City Gate was closed once more and the drawbridge was raised. Lingxi City, shrouded in the darkness of the night, seemed as though nothing had happened at all as it regained its tranquility, waiting silently for the sun to rise once more. Because of the careful arrangements, everything was carried out in silence. No one knew what kind of impact this secret operation would have on the upcoming war in the southern region and the structure of the entire China region. The night grew darker and darker. Even the last bit of starlight was hidden in the clouds and disappeared. The entire southern region was shrouded in the dark clouds of war and could not be at peace. Under the dark clouds, who was the chess player and who was the chess piece? It was night. Jinhai City, Lingnan Province. Outside the isolated territory of Jinhai City was a chess piece that Ouyang Shua had embedded in the heart of Lingnan City. Ruan Ping and the others had tried several times to remove this nail, but to no avail. Song Wen, the city governor, had grown up rapidly after a period of training. He was calm and steady in the face of danger. Xiao He, the chief of the administrative office, had a very high opinion of Song Wen and intended to recommend Song Wen for the position of county governor. Ouyang Shua approved of Xiao He's proposal very much. As long as the time was right, Song Wen's promotion would be right in front of him. Obviously, Ouyang Shua's trust in Song Wen and Song Wu was not affected when the Song family's disciples committed murder on the streets in Shanghai City and old Master Song's favoritism. On the other hand, Song Jia's father, Song Tianxiong, was rather uneasy. Not only did he consciously strengthen the restrictions on the family's disciples, but when Ouyang Shua returned to Shanghai City, Song Tianxiong specially came to apologize. Ouyang Shua was also very pleased with his father-in-law's tactfulness. He did not wish for anyone to act recklessly in Shanghai City before it was even established. This kind of seedling had to be nipped in the bud. It was just that it was hard for his wife, Song Jia, to be caught in the middle. That night, Jinhai City, which was thousands of miles away from Lingxi City, was also not peaceful. The army that had disappeared from Lingxi City walked out of the teleportation formation in Jinhai City one by one. After lining up, under the leadership of the officers, they silently entered the military camp that had been prepared for a long time to rest. The whole process was also quiet. They were also waiting for the sun to rise again. If one observed carefully, they would find that the army that appeared in Jinhai City was larger than the army that had been teleported from Lingxi City. In other words, other armies had been teleported in from other cities. It was clear that this was a large-scale mobilization of the army that had not been planned on the spur of the moment. Even the barracks that the army was stationed in had been built long ago, and the granaries of Jinhai City had already been stocked with millions of units of grain, as if they had been waiting for this moment to arrive. Stationed in Jinhai City was the latest to be formed, the 3rd Legion of the Stalwart Tiger Army. Its soldiers were all from the various guard divisions of the various counties, and its commander was the female General Fan Lihua. The central tent was brightly lit. Fan Lihua did not sit in the seat of honor, but on the first seat to the left. Seated below her was the commander of the City Guard Corps, Eli, and across from him was the commander of the 2nd Legion of the Dragon Stalwart Army. Seated at the very top was a heroic young general. It was none other than the genius General Hua Tsubing. It was obvious that the army that had been quietly teleported to Zhenhai City was the Imperial Guard Corps, the 2nd Legion of the Dragon Stalwart Army, and the City Guard Corps. Each of these legions had accomplished a great deal in battle. Speaking of which, the City Guard Corps and the 3rd Legion of the Stalwart Tiger Army had only been formed before Ouyang Shua had set out to sea. At the time, they had been formed for 2 reasons. One was to expand the army, and the other was to prepare for the upcoming war. It was not without reason that the 3rd Legion of the Stalwart Tiger Army had chosen to be stationed in Jinhai City. No one would believe that such a small coastal city would be garrisoned by a fully organized field army. The reason that Shanghai City had given was that they needed to guard against a surprise attack by the Southern Ridge City-State. What happened later proved that without the presence of the 3rd Legion, they truly would not have been able to deal with the Southern Ridge City-State's attacks. By the time Ruan Ping and the others learned that Jinhai City was garrisoned by an entire field army, they had completely given up on any thoughts of taking the city in a short period of time and ceased all activities. Completely deranged. Ruan Ping had ridiculed them at the time. Even so, Ruan Ping and the others had not thought much of it. After all, Shanghai City's attitude had always been that they would focus on a western expedition, while the Eastern Front would focus on defense. As for why the City Guard Corps had been sent to Heartstone City to temper themselves, their intentions were even more obvious. Thus, Shanghai City had spent more than half a year preparing for today's battle. They had taken into account all aspects of their army, resources, intelligence, and public opinion. It could be said that they had painstakingly worked hard. Otherwise, Ouyang Shuo would not have been so full of confidence. After the Imperial Guard Corps and the 2nd Legion of the Dragon Stallion Army arrived at the border and set up camp, they stealthily left under the cover of night, traveling through Kunming Commandery and stealthily entering Lingxi City. Ouyang Shuo's high-profile appearance in Lingxi City and his high-profile inspection of the 3rd Legion of the Dragon Stallion Army, as well as his military parade and exercise, had all been to attract the attention of spies from all sides. This was to provide cover for the Imperial Guard Corps and the 2nd Legion of the Dragon Stallion Army to escape. Even a merger and the press conference had been for this purpose. Of course, this was also to further confuse the Southern Ridge city-state. As a result, the attention of all sides was focused on Ouyang Shuo. No one could have imagined that Bai Qi's army, which no one had paid any attention to, would actually quietly withdraw 2/3 of its army. Even now, Qin Fun and the others still believe that Bai Qi's army stationed at the border of Mengding Commandery consisted of 3 major armies, and not a lone 1st Legion of the Dragon Stallion Army. Ouyang Shuo's strategy, or rather, his performance, had clearly been very successful, confusing all his enemies. Besides Qin Fun and the others, the most pitiful was the Southern Ridge city-state. Ever since the Battle of Chibi began, Ouyang Shuo had been overbearing, his army directly targeting the Southern Ridge city-state. His most elite Imperial Guard Corps had not even participated in the Battle of Chibi, instead heading to the border of Mengding Commandery in a high-profile manner. The Battle of Chibi had just ended, and the dark clouds of war had shrouded the skies of the Southern Ridge city-state. All the players of the China region knew that Shanghai City had hardened its heart to attack the Southern Ridge city-state. No one could have imagined that from the very beginning, the General Military Administration's plan had been to first annihilate the Southern Ridge city-state, and then return to take care of the Southern Ridge city-state. The reason was very simple. Flipping open the map of the China region, it was not difficult to discover that the Southern Ridge city-state was an isolated land with no strategic depth. If they wanted to take it down, they could do so at any time. In comparison, the situation of the Southern Ridge city-state was much more complicated. Chapter 730. Compared to the Yunnan city-state, the Lingnan city-state was not only geographically adjacent to the Xiangnan city-state, but it was also the founder and core member of the alliance of the 4 major city-states. Ruanping was at the forefront of the resistance against Shanghai City. Therefore, once the Lingnan city-state was destroyed, the alliance of the 4 major city-states would be half crippled. If they took the opportunity to destroy the Yunnan city-state, the enemy's plan would collapse. As the first city-state in China, the Lingnan city-state was the most mature and had strong internal cohesion. It also had an extraordinary relationship with the Yanhuang alliance. It would be extremely difficult to take down the Lingnan city-state through conventional means. It could be imagined that if Shanghai City chose to attack the Yunnan city-state first, the day the Yunnan city-state was destroyed would be the time for the other 3 city-states to cooperate to the next level. If the 3 city-states joined forces, they would block Shanghai City's path to the north. All of these factors determined that if they wanted to break the alliance, they had to first take down the Lingnan city-state. There was another benefit to Shanghai City taking down the Lingnan city-state. This was because the east of the Lingnan province was the Jiangchuan province where the siege lines were located and the Minnan province where the dragon-seeking acupuncture point was located. Once they took down the Lingnan city-state, the pressure on Shanghai City's eastern defense would be greatly reduced. They could then focus on dealing with the Chuanbei city-state and the Xiangnan city-state. Or rather, they could carry out Ouyang Shuo's foreign war strategy and deal with the ASEAN countries. The only surprise would be the ripple caused by the dragon-seeking acupuncture point. Even so, it would not change Shanghai City's established strategy. Shanghai City, the central tent. Under the flickering light, Hua Tubing stood up in his military uniform. His expression was solemn and heroic as he said, "The Emperor's secret order. He solemnly took out an imperial edict. Receive the order. With a swoosh, Fan Lihua, Shi Wansui, and Eli bowed to the imperial edict at the same time. Seeing the imperial edict was like seeing the emperor himself. Hua Tsubing slowly unfolded the imperial edict and read, "The Imperial Guards, the 2nd Legion of the Dragon Stallion Army, the 3rd Legion of the Stallion Tiger Army, and the City Guards are to be temporarily reorganized into the Eastern Punitive Army. Appoint the Great General Hua Tsubing as the Commander-in-Chief of the Eastern Punitive Expedition. The matter of the Eastern Punitive Expedition can be decided by the Commander-in-Chief with a single word, as though I was there personally." With that, Hua Tsubing took out the commander's seal and showed it to the 3 generals. "As you command." Shi Wansui and the other 2 bowed again. They didn't look surprised. Among the 4 generals, Hua Tsubing was not only the only divine general, but also the one with the highest military rank. He was also a legendary general. Shi Wansui and the other 2 had no objections to Hua Tsubing taking command of the army. "Greetings, Marshal." Shi Wansui and the other 2 bowed to Hua Tsubing and established their allegiance. Hua Tsubing nodded. His eyes were sparkling, and he felt a little excited. This was the first time he was leading an army on his own ever since he had joined Shanghai City. Furthermore, he was leading an army of nearly 300,000 soldiers. Even during the reign of Emperor Wu of Han, Hua Tsubing had never commanded such an army. The expeditionary army's tent was filled with brilliant generals. They were as fierce as Xie Lai, as brave as Shi Wansui, and as heroic as Fan Lihua. All of them were famous generals of the present age. The 20 division commanders of the 4 major armies were also the best of the best. Hua Tsubing knew that he had to prove his worth as a divine general through this battle. After composing himself, Hua Tsubing began to name the generals. He shouted, "Shi Wansui, present. I appoint you as the vanguard general. You will lead the army to the center of Jiaozhou Commandery and destroy all enemies along the way. Take down all the main cities." Hua Tsubing handed over the first commander's seal. "As you command." Shi Wansui looked excited as he received the commander's seal with both hands. As the name suggested, the vanguard general was a true vanguard. The fact that the marshal had given this important task to the 2nd Dragon Stallion Army was enough to prove how much he valued them. It was the greatest reward for them. Xie Lai and Fan Lihua both looked envious when they saw this. "Fan Lihua." Hua Tsubing continued, "Present." Fan Lihua was also dressed in military attire. Her voice was crisp but powerful, not inferior to a man's. "I appoint you as the right general. You will lead the army to the east of Jiaozhou Commandery. Take a roundabout route and attack the cities and strongholds. At the same time, be ready to support the front line at any time. Do not act on your own," Hua Tsubing ordered solemnly. "As you command." Fan Lihua nodded solemnly. She was stationed in Oceantown, so she could be considered to be well-versed in the geography of half of the Southridge province. She was the most suitable person to lead the army in a roundabout route. As for supporting the front line, that was also part of the job. In ancient times, when a number of soldiers exceeded 100,000, it was impossible to gather the entire army in one place. Instead, the army had to be divided. There were 3 main reasons for this. First, there was the problem of supplies. The biggest problem in ancient wars was the problem of supplies. If an army exceeded 100,000, the amount of supplies needed would be astronomical, and the number of auxiliary soldiers responsible for transporting supplies would increase exponentially. The burden on the country was enough to drag a rich country into the abyss and beyond redemption. There are countless similar incidents in history. The most famous one was when Emperor Yang of Sui conquered Goguryeo 3 times. Large amounts of supplies had been transported from the south to the far north. A wheelbarrow full of grain had not even reached its destination when the cart driver ate up all the grain on the way. When it was time to hand over the supplies, all that was left were tattered carts. It was a shocking sight. Fortunately, the supply of supplies was not too big of a problem in this war. In the 3rd year of Gaia, none of the surviving territories had a shortage of food. Thus, the granaries of the cities along the way would be stocked with food. It was September, and the first rice harvest had just ended. There was more than enough supplies. Thus, the army could completely resupply along the way. Second, there was the problem of command. In ancient times, there was no advanced communication system like the modern army. Commanding a single soldier was impossible. When a war broke out, the commander could only mobilize the army on a large scale. A single mistake could cause the command to be interrupted. When that happened, the army would either fight on their own or flee in all directions. Even the best divine general could not command an army of more than 100,000 at once. For a professional army like Shanghai City, it was better. They were well trained, and it was more reasonable to use the modern army as a reference. But in ancient times, many armies were recruited at the last minute. A single mistake could result in a mass exodus. The famous Battle of the Fei River in history was exactly like this. The army led by Fu Jian had not even fought with the army of the Eastern Jin dynasty, but was defeated without a fight. And the Battle of Fei River was the next battle. Third, there was the problem of marching. The width of the ancient official road was limited. If more than 100,000 troops marched at once, they would form a terrifying long dragon. It would take a few hours to run from the front to the back on horseback, not to mention that they could not see the end. Most of the time, the front army had already fought, but the rear army was still slowly rushing to the battlefield. In the tent of the central army camp, the roll call continued. Eli. Huatubing called out the last name. Here. Eli was like an iron tower as he walked out with a gruff voice. I appoint you as the left general. Lead the army to attack along the west of Jiaozhou County. Move quickly and attack cities and strongholds. Be ready to support the front army at any time. Do not act on your own. Huatubing gave a similar military order. Yes, General. Eli took the military seal. In this way, the three armies would form a trident and pierce into the heart of Lingnan City. Jiaozhou County was not only the largest county in Lingnan Province, but it was also the most developed county. Taking Jiaozhou County was equivalent to disintegrating more than half of Lingnan City's military strength. More importantly, the 150,000 soldiers of Lingnan City were gathered at the border of Jiaozhou County and Zhaoqing County. They were facing off against the 1st and 2nd Corps of the brave Tiger Army led by Sun Bin. Huatubing's goal was to join forces with the brave Tiger Army and annihilate the 150,000 soldiers. If we take down the Allied army, we will have half the battle won, Huatubing said passionately. Shi Wansui and the others were also full of fighting spirit. However, Huatubing changed the topic with a solemn expression and raised his eyes. The enemy has the home advantage and can teleport at any time. If we are not careful, our army might be defeated one by one. The army of Shanghai City could use the heaven and earth great shift, so naturally, the allied army of Lingnan City would not be a problem. The cost of teleporting the three armies from Shanghai City alone would cost 210,000 gold coins. In times of crisis, Ruan Ping and the others would not be stingy with the cost of teleportation. This way, the Allied army could form a teleportation network with the major cities as nodes. They would not dare to say much, but they could still afford to teleport 2 or 3 times. This also means that the enemy could appear in any of the major cities that we have not conquered. Therefore, the armies must push forward to ensure that no one escapes from our rear. Huatubing continued. More importantly, the three armies must maintain contact at all times. Once the enemy sets up an ambush in one of the cities, the other 2 armies must rush over as reinforcements in the shortest time possible. Understood. Shi Wansui and the others nodded. The army of Shanghai City had experienced this when they attacked Liizhou County and Zhaoqing County. Huatubing knew that everyone present was a famous general, so he did not need to remind them. He smiled and said, "The enemy's ambush is a crisis, but also an opportunity. The Black Snake Guards and Shanghai Guards under your command have already set up an inescapable trap in Lingnan Province. No matter which city the enemy teleports to, we will know immediately." The intelligence network of Shanghai City was now incomparable to that of Liizhou County and Zhaoqing County. Ouyang Shuo had spent millions of gold coins, so he would not waste his efforts. If Lingnan City wanted to use this opportunity to ambush the army of Shanghai City, they would have made a mistake and would definitely suffer a huge setback. Once we confirm the enemy's teleportation location, we must lock onto them. Then, we will work with the brave Tiger Army in the west to surround them and trap them in the city, Hu Tubing said. Understood. Chapter 731. The morning sun shone brightly as it rose. In the morning light, the three armies were like three dragons emerging from the sea. They set out from the west, north, and east gates of Oceantown in a grandiose fashion. Hua Tsubing did not linger in Oceantown after sending off the three armies. In Hua Tsubing's plan, he did not leave a rear army to hold the fort, much less a reserve force. Hua Tsubing would personally lead the Imperial Guard Army from the northeast to Chaozhou County, the easternmost part of Lingnan Province. He would then head north from Chaozhou County to attack Shaozhou County, the northernmost part of Lingnan Province. To the north of Shaozhou County was Xiangnan Province. Long-range attacks were Hua Tsubing's forte. At the same time, the Jiaozhou fleet stationed at the Jiaozhou harbor outside the city had also set off. Passing through the Pearl River system, they entered Lingnan Province. The Jiaozhou fleet's mission was to provide cover for the army along the waterways. When necessary, it was to transport rations and supplies on a large scale, or even directly transport the army. In the waters of Lingnan Province, the Jiaozhou fleet was invincible and had no natural enemies. If a territory's main city happened to be built on the Pearl River, they could only blame it on their bad luck. Jiaozhou Navy Commander Shi Lang was an experienced naval general. Under Shi Lang's command, the role the Jiaozhou fleet would play in the Battle of Lingnan was worth looking forward to. At around 9 in the morning, the 10,000 Years Army crossed the border of Oceantown and officially entered enemy territory. The enemy's border guards were annihilated by the army before they could even react. The flames of war were ignited. In just one morning, the various armies found their targets and began to attack. All of Jiaozhou County was engulfed in the flames of war. Only then did the news of Shanghai City's change of target spread. The world was shocked. Yunnan Province, Alliance Headquarters. Is the information accurate? Qin Fan confirmed with the intelligence officer for the third time. It's absolutely true. According to the reports of our spies, we can confirm that Shanghai City's Imperial Guard Army, 2nd Dragon Stallion Army, City Guard Army, and 3rd Tiger Army are all in Lingnan Province. Phew! Qin Fan let out a long sigh. He didn't know if he should rejoice or be angry. It couldn't be clearer. From the beginning to the end, Shanghai City's target had always been the Lingnan City-State. The Yunnan City-State was just a smokescreen set up by the enemy to confuse everyone. Damn it! The enormous pressure was suddenly lifted, and Qin Feng faintly felt a trace of anger for being looked down upon. Does this mean that Shanghai City has never seen us as opponents of the same level? What should we do now? Take the initiative to counterattack? Someone suggested. Qin Feng suppressed the indescribable emotion that had just ignited in his heart. He shook his head and said, "Counterattack what? Don't forget, the enemy still has 2 field legions stationed at our border. Which one of you has the confidence to defeat the enemy's 2 legions with just 200,000 soldiers?" Hearing Qin Feng's question, the lords looked at each other awkwardly. Putting aside the newly reorganized 3rd Legion of the Dragon Stallion Army, the 1st Legion of the Dragon Stallion Army, personally led by Killing God Bai Qi, was one of the oldest legions of Shanghai City. Its power was even on par with the Imperial Guard. No one had the confidence to defeat that god of death. Seeing the lord's expressions, Qin Fan felt a trace of disdain and solemnly said, "So, we should just wait and see. We absolutely cannot provoke that killing god." The lords nodded in unison, deeply in agreement. As for the fate of Lingnan City, there was nothing they could do. After all, Ruan Ping had only promised to restrain Shanghai City's Stallion Tiger Army during the meeting between the 4 city-states. Now that they had taken the initiative to restrain the Dragon Stallion Army, they had already done their part. "My friend, good luck." South Xiangnan Province, Rosy Cloud City. Within the Lord's residence, south of rosy clouds, had just received the news and immediately summoned Zhang Liang to discuss countermeasures. She anxiously asked, Zifang, how should we respond to Shanghai City's attack on Lingnan City? What do the others think? Them? A bunch of cowards. South of rosy clouds' expression turned ugly at the mention of this. Their intention is to maintain the original plan. We will be responsible for restraining Shanghai City's Leopard Tau army and will not act rashly. Zhang Liang nodded, seemingly unsurprised. South of rosy clouds frowned. Does teacher also think that we should bide our time? No. Zhang Liang shook his head. My lord, the situation may be worse than you think. Then, Zhang Liang began to analyze the current battle situation with his lord, focusing on the strategy he had laid out. It could be foreseen that once Lingnan City falls, the strategy will be broken. At that time, we will have to face Shanghai City alone, which is more than twice as strong. At that time, will my lord still have the confidence to resist the invasion of Shanghai City? Zhang Liang finally said. Zhang Liang's analysis was exactly the same as the strategy formulated by Shanghai City. The title of Sage Strategist was indeed well-deserved. Before leaving home, Zhang Liang could clearly see the strategic goal of Shanghai City. It was truly admirable. South of rosy clouds broke out in a cold sweat when she heard this. I'll go and explain it to them now. South of rosy clouds got up and left in a hurry. Seeing this, Zhang Liang secretly shook his head. Sure enough, in less than an hour, South of rosy clouds returned again, looking dejected. Damn it, they're all a bunch of short-sighted people. South of rosy clouds cursed. Obviously, the result of the discussion he had convened with the lords of Xiangnan City was not ideal. Not everyone had the courage to cut off their means of retreat. After all, not everyone had a far-sighted vision. The lords naturally had no objections to the defense of their territory. It was their responsibility to defend their territory. However, they were somewhat unwilling to take the initiative to send troops to Lingnan and directly face the army of Shanghai City. The battle situation is unclear now, and the war has just begun. It's not too late to make a decision after Lingnan City asks for help. The lords tried to evade. South of rosy clouds was not an eloquent person to begin with, so he was speechless. Anyone with a discerning eye knew that saving people was like fighting a fire. According to Gaia's rules, city-states could only form an alliance in name, and they could not form a second alliance internally. This also meant that if Xiangnan City sent troops to support Lingnan City, they could not teleport there directly. At most, they could only teleport to the border and then march from there. Therefore, if they really wanted to help Lingnan City, it was naturally better to send troops as soon as possible. By the time the war situation is clear, I'm afraid it'll be too late. South of rosy clouds thought hatefully. Zhang Liang saw his lord's uncertain expression and knew that his guess was correct. Having been in Rosy Cloud City for so long, Zhang Liang already knew the mentality of the city lords like the back of his hand. Too cautious, but not bold enough. This kind of mentality could not be said to be bad, but in a cruel environment like the wilderness, it was difficult for such a mentality to achieve great things and become a hegemon. In contrast, their opponent, Shanghai City, was worthy of praise. The other party was more cautious than anyone else when it was time to be cautious, but when it was time to take risks, they were bolder than anyone else. Just like the battle on the Lingnan Ridge, such a large-scale diversion was an extremely bold plan, and even Zhang Liang hadn't expected it beforehand. Zifang, what should we do now? His lord's question interrupted Zhang Liang's thoughts. Zhang Liang had already thought it through and said, My lord, we can't wait any longer. Immediately unite a few hardcore allies and form a separate army to head south and attack Xiaozhou County. Directly send troops? South of Rosy Clouds was somewhat uncertain when she heard this. That's right. Must we do this? We must. Okay. South of Rosy Clouds gritted her teeth. Let's do it. I'll go and gather the army now. If she really made up her mind, South of Rosy Clouds could also go all out. Compared to Xiangnan City-State, the neighboring Chuanbei City-State didn't move at all. Whether Shanghai City attacked Yunnan or Lingnan, the internally chaotic Chuanbei City had the same attitude. They were only responsible for restraining the leopard army of Shanghai City. Everything else was not within their consideration. Lingnan Province, the Allied Army headquarters. 3 days ago, Ruanping had already set up a temporary headquarters to deal with the war in the southern border. The original purpose was what Ruanping had promised Qinfen before, to be responsible for restraining the brave tiger army of Shanghai City. If necessary, they would consider sending troops to Zhaoqing County and directly confront Shanghai City. Therefore, Ruanping had been sitting in the headquarters for the past few days. Unexpectedly, the mainland, which was calm yesterday, suddenly set off a storm. There was no doubt that the biggest impact of Shanghai City's attack on Jiaozhou County was Ruanping and the others. Oh my God, what happened? After being resurrected in King City, the overlord that had been killed still had a confused look on his face. The other lords in the headquarters were even more panicked. How could this be? It's over, it's over. Damn it, that's not how the script is supposed to be, okay? The lords were terrified and helpless. For a moment, they did not know what to say. All of them were incoherent and restless. They kept pacing back and forth in the hall, their faces pale. Some of the territories close to Zhaohai City could not sit still. Some forcibly returned to their territories, while others knew that they could not resist the army of Shanghai City. So they stayed in the headquarters, hoping that the city could come up with a solution. Even someone as strong as Ruanping could not help but feel weak in the legs when he first received the news, and he almost fell to the ground. This news was like a bolt from the blue to Lingnan City. Think about it. Other than the 4 major armies led by Hua Xiubing, the Jiaozhou fleet, and the 2 armies led by Sun Bin, Shanghai City had more than 500,000 troops to attack Lingnan City. It was twice as much as attacking Yunnan City-State. Just thinking about it made people shudder. Shanghai City really thinks highly of us. Ruanping laughed at himself. The other lords could not laugh at all. This joke was not funny at all. According to reliable sources, Bayan is preparing to hire 100,000 mercenaries at once, Peerless Elegance said. The reason why Heartstone City hired mercenaries was self-evident. Their only opponent was Handan City. Where did that brat get so much money? Dichun was confused. As a matter of fact, Bayan was originally on the same side as Dichun. When Dichun was at his lowest point, he was invited by Dichun to join Dichun's camp and help him out. However, the two of them had not worked together for long before they parted ways again due to differences in ideology and status. Therefore, Dichun wasn't completely clueless about Bayan. It could be a loan from the Bank of the Four Seas, Peerless Elegance speculated. The biggest possibility is that Sei without clothes lent it directly to Tao Wu. Maybe it's a loan from the Bank of the Four Seas. Chun speculated. Lucky bastard. Chun cursed inwardly. Do you think it was the old fox's idea to do this? Their goal is to hold us back, but in reality, they didn't really hire them? Chun speculated. Peerless Elegance nodded and said, "We can't rule out this possibility, but I think it's an overt plot. If we don't send troops, both sides will be fine. But if we send troops to help Lingnan City, they may take this opportunity to take a bite out of the north." All the signs show that Don't Say Yu Wui doesn't just want to set up a nail in the north, but also wants to cultivate a force that can contend with our division. So, once your city has a reason to attack us. Peerless Elegance took this opportunity to remind Chun not to look down on their neighbor in the north. So, the old fox is using money to pressure us and warn us not to act rashly? Chun's face darkened. Wasn't this the exclusive skill of the nobles? Why did the old fox use it on them in the blink of an eye? How ironic. You can think of it that way. Peerless Elegance saw through it. The game had its rules, and the distribution of wealth was different from reality. If the nobles were still immersed in their position as the reapers of wealth, they would suffer a setback again. If we don't send troops, how can we explain to our ally, Ruanping? Dichun was in a dilemma. Peerless Elegance's eyes were calm, but her words were cold. What explanation do we need for a dead man? She was not optimistic about Lingnan City at all. A worthless pawn was destined to be abandoned. Di Chun was silent. It was not that Di Chun could not bear to abandon Ruan Ping. On this point, he and Peerless Elegance were the same. Their hearts were as hard as a rock. Di Chun was not willing to give up a great opportunity to attack the rise of Shanghai City. In the first half of the year, Handan City had shown great power and finally closed the gap between the two sides. In the blink of an eye, there would be an even greater gap. This was a deep and unforgettable blow. Don't think too much. Peerless Elegance's expression softened, like a spring breeze, warming people's hearts and soothing Di Chun's restless mind. She said, "It's better to settle down and strengthen our own foundation." Imperial Wind reported that there are still some hidden resistance forces everywhere in the territory, ready to make trouble at any time. Hearing this, Di Chun struggled several times and finally sighed dejectedly. This feeling of being suppressed and schemed against by the opponent was very uncomfortable for a proud person like Di Chun. If not for the tempering, Di Chun would have already exploded. As for now, Di Chun could easily control his emotions. Even when he was defeated in the Battle of Red Cliffs, he did not say anything, but his mentality was getting better. "I'll listen to you. We'll watch the show from the side." Di Chun nodded. Peerless Elegance smiled gently. "All right." Di Chun suddenly thought of something and asked, "2 days ago, Xiongba proposed at the Alliance meeting that we should activate our secret power to find the dragon acupoints. What do you think?" Peerless Elegance thought for a moment and said, "We can do it, but don't have too much hope." "What do you mean?" Peerless Elegance flipped his hair and said with a smile, "For the dragon acupoints person, I specially asked Imperial Wind to collect information about him. This person is a mission maniac. He does things with a one-track mind and likes to go all the way. To put it bluntly, he likes to go to a dead end." "That's right. Otherwise, he wouldn't have fallen out with the old fox because of such a small matter. He's really stupid." Di Chun nodded in agreement. "It's not stupid. This person was chosen by saying nothing close and developed to this day, so he has some ability. At least, he's not really stupid." Peerless Elegance shook his head. "If we go to find the dragon acupoints, it's more likely that we'll be used by each other. The dragon acupoints person won't really trust us." "That's not bad." Di Chun nodded. In Di Chun's eyes, allies were also making use of each other. "There's one more thing. It's different from saying nothing close. The dragon acupoints person has the mentality of hating the rich. To put it bluntly, it's the mentality of an ordinary citizen. They don't have a good impression of the aristocratic families," Peerless Elegance reminded. Di Chun nodded. "I've also heard about this." Speaking of this, Di Chun's face changed. He suddenly remembered that he had been humiliated by the Siege Lion and the Dragon Acupoints person in the first system auction. In the past, Di Chun had no interest in coming into contact with the Dragon Acupoints person. But now it was different. For the sake of benefits, Di Chun could choose to forget the previous unpleasantness. Peerless Elegance continued. "Xiongba is so eager to instigate the Dragon Acupoints person. He wants to build a buffer between Overlord City and Shanghai City. Especially when the Lingnan War starts, it looks like Shanghai City will take over Lingnan Province. If there's no change in the Dragon Acupoints person, Xiongba will have a headache. After that guy took over Ezhou Island, he was so proud. Now he's afraid. He was beheaded in the Battle of Red Cliffs. It's a shame." Di Chun didn't have a good impression of Xiongba. "Speaking of Ezhou Island, I don't believe that saying nothing close will be indifferent." Peerless Elegance's meaning was unclear. "You're right. Let him fight with the old fox. We'll sit on the mountain and watch the tiger's head." Di Chun also understood, and his mood suddenly became happy. At this time, Di Chun was glad that his territory was very different from Shanghai City. "So, we can just watch from the side and let Xiongba worry about the Dragon Acupoints person. Success is gratifying. Even if we fail, we won't lose anything." "Why not? Let's do that." Di Chun nodded. The study gradually became quiet. Taiyuan Province, Luo Feng City. Shanghai City had changed their target, and even their ally, Feng Qiuhuang, did not know about it. "You even hid it from me. Sooner or later, I'll settle the score with you." Feng Xiaohuang was still as domineering as ever. Master, shouldn't we do something? The one who asked was a middle-aged strategist. Upon closer inspection, it was Cheng Yu who worked under Cao Cao. Feng Xiaohuang was really capable. She couldn't subdue Cheng Yu in the military map, but after returning to the main map, she managed to recruit this top strategist in the blink of an eye. No one knew how she did it. Naturally, we have to do something. No matter what, we have to create some trouble for Di Qian and the rest. Feng Xiaohuang smiled, but her eyes were filled with killing intent. Chapter 733. For Lingnan City-State, the 18th of September was a very difficult day. On that day, the four major armies of Shanghai City split into four groups and cooperated with the Navy fleet to charge through Jiaozhou County. In just one day, they took down four major cities. One had to know that the entire Lingnan City-State had less than 40 territories. The three major armies of Shi Wansui, Ilai, and Fan Lihua formed an impenetrable trident that pushed forward from the south to Beiping County. They did not leave any blind spots and did not let a single fish slip through the net. The three major armies fought steadily and did not rely on speed to win. They only sought to advance steadily. That way, they naturally gathered an immovable aura that made any enemies in their way tremble in fear. It was as if Mount Tai was pressing down on them, suffocating them. The Imperial Guards led by Hua Tsubing had a different style. The Imperial Guards did not stop in Jiaozhou County. They quickly marched all the way to Chaozhou County. In just one day, they arrived at the border of Chaozhou County and prepared to launch a surprise attack on Chaozhou County. Before the battle began, the General Administration of Military Affairs had circled 8 key targets on the map for the Imperial Guards. As long as they took down the 8 major cities of the 2 counties, no one could stop the Imperial Guards. Hua Tsubing led a precise attack. Even if the territory behind the Imperial Guards had not been cleared, Hua Tsubing was confident that he would not be surrounded by the enemy, because the enemy would not be able to track the Imperial Guards. Only Hua Tsubing could execute such a strategy. It was a unique skill. Lingnan Province, Alliance Command. Their territory was ravaged by the enemy, and they were isolated and helpless in foreign affairs. Ruan Ping and the others were so worried that their hair turned white. The next morning, the lords who had not slept all night gathered in the meeting hall with dark circles under their eyes. "We can't sit around and wait for death," Ruan Ping shouted. "We have to take action." "That's right. We can't take chances." Shanghai City's goal this time is very obvious. They want to completely eradicate the Lingnan City-State. There is no room for compromise. Someone echoed, "At this time, we can only fight. We can only fight." A group of people who had been forced into a desperate situation let out their strongest cry. "Our biggest advantage now is that we can teleport at any time." Ruan Ping was the first to speak. "We must make good use of this advantage and give the enemy a fatal blow. I suggest that, with the exception of the territories that are still fighting against Shanghai City's army, all of the other territories' garrisons should gather together and secretly rendezvous with our allies. Let's gather our superior forces and get rid of one of Shanghai City's legions first." Seconded. The city-state had no way out now. It could only cut off all means of retreat and fight with its back to the river. Which army should I attack? Ruan Ping came to the front of the battle map and said, "According to the intelligence from the front lines, the Imperial Guard Corps has penetrated deep into the enemy's territory alone. Unfortunately, the commander of the enemy was Hua Tsubing, so it would be too risky to trap them. It was not worth it. Therefore, I suggest that we attack the enemy's right flank, the Fan Lihua Corps." All the lords agreed with him. They did not have the confidence to go against Hua Tsubing. On the other hand, the Fan Lihua Corps was positioned on the flanks and had more room to maneuver. Furthermore, Fan Lihua was a female general, so the lords instinctively regarded her as the weakest general. Furthermore, the Fan Lihua Corps was positioned on the right flank and fought in a roundabout manner. There were many ambush points that could be chosen, and it would not be easy for the enemy to plot against them. It had to be said that Ruan Ping had some skills and was very accurate in analyzing problems. Ruan Ping pointed to a city on the map and said, "I suggest that we set up an ambush here." All the lords moved forward to take a look and immediately understood. The city that Ruan Ping had chosen was surrounded by mountains on 3 sides. Only the south side was a flat area, like a huge pocket. This way, the family Huakor would be trapped in the pocket from the south and would not be able to escape. Even better, there were no large rivers around the city, which basically prevented the enemy fleets from joining in the fun. Wonderful, amazing, brilliant. All the lords were generous with their praise, causing Ruan Ping to smile. Of course, this was not Ruan Ping's improvisation. He had been thinking about these problems the entire night. From the looks of it, it was very beneficial to make sufficient preparations. Since everyone agrees, let's move. Ruan Ping knew that with every moment they delayed, a city might fall and the strength of the city would be weakened. Thus, they had to race against time. Pass down the order. Immediately break camp and retreat from the border. Gather at Xinjiang City. Xinjiang City was located at the border of Jiaozhou County. It was the largest fortress the Alliance Army had set up at the border. The Alliance Army's main supply base was set up at Xinjiang City. Thus, it was only natural for the army to retreat to Xinjiang City. Will the stalwart Tiger Army let us retreat easily? Someone was worried. Ruan Ping was not worried. He smiled and said, "Don't worry. No matter what, we have an army of 150,000, and all of them are elites. There are only 2 armies on the other side. As long as we make arrangements for retreat and take protective measures, the enemy will not dare to act rashly. At most, they will follow us and will not attack." That makes sense. All right, hurry up and make the arrangements. Also, inform the garrison of the various territories to prepare for teleportation. When we reach Xinjiang City, we will teleport to the target city at the same time, Ruan Ping instructed. "Why don't we let them teleport over first? Are you stupid?" Another lord answered on his behalf before Ruan Ping could say anything. "Shanghai City's intelligence agents have been watching us. If we all teleport over together, even if their agents are blind, they will know what's going on. Will they still be fooled?" Oh, the lord who asked the question flushed red at the rebuttal. "Hurry up and get ready." Ruan Ping changed the topic and helped the lord out of his predicament. The entire Alliance's command center immediately bustled with activity. With a specific goal and plan, at least everyone was no longer in a mess like ants on a hot pan. From the lords to the soldiers, everyone was holding back their anger. Their fighting spirit was reignited. In this chaotic world, no one was willing to sit and wait for death. At the same time, in the encampment of the stalwart Tiger Army, a burly soldier opened a tent and walked in with large strides. He knelt on one knee and said respectfully, "Marshal, the enemy on the other side is moving. From the looks of it, they are preparing to retreat." The Central Army tent was extremely simple and crude. Apart from the scattered military books all around, the most eye-catching thing was the enormous map of South Ridge Province hanging in the center of the tent. This was the masterpiece of countless spies of the Military Intelligence Division who had labored for several months. Sun Bin sat on the wheelchair that the Mo Family and No. 7 Research Institute had specially built for him, silently staring at the battle map. Speaking of which, Sun Bin's wheelchair was not simple. The wheelchair's bearings and wheels were forged from fine steel. The outer layer of the wheels was sewn with 2 thick layers of rubber. Although it was not inflated, it could already move on complicated terrain. The bearings and steel wheels, coupled with the driving parts, could be considered a microcosm of Shanghai City's industrialization. Apart from that, the wheelchair had been meticulously designed by the Mo family's mechanical geniuses. There were poison-extracting arrows that could pierce through the heart, as well as related ejection escape devices. Even the wheelchair's driving system had been designed by the Mo family's mechanical geniuses. Such an intricate design made some of the mechanical experts in the No. 7 Research Institute gasp in amazement. The ingenuity of ancient mechanical techniques was unique, and it was not something that could be fathomed by future generations. When Sun Bin heard the soldier's report, he was not surprised. He did not even turn his head. He smiled and said, "The fish have finally started swimming. Inform General Di Qing to come here for a discussion." "Yes." The soldier turned and left silently. After a while, the bronze-masked Di Qing walked into the tent. "Marshal." Di Qing bowed from afar. Speaking of which, both of them had words carved on their faces. Sun Bin's was branded, while Di Qing's was carved because of his lowly status. The difference was that Sun Bin never hid his face, while Di Qing always wore a bronze mask. From this, one could see the characteristics of the two generals. Sun Bin had completely let go of his past experiences, and his heart was calm. After all, no matter how much he tried to hide, he could not hide his crippled legs. As such, he might as well openly show his true face. A commander-in-chief of an army in a wheelchair. What a sight! Di Qing was different. He was born of a lowly status and had a sense of inferiority. He was used to covering his face and hiding in the shadows. In this way, it added a different kind of charm to it. When he saw the bronze mask on the battlefield, he knew that the murderous General Di Qing had arrived. Both of them were different, but they had coincidentally met to work together. It could be considered a kind of fate. Because of this, Di Qing respected Sun Bin even more. Ever since he joined the stalwart Tiger Army, Di Qing, the second-in-command in the stalwart Tiger Army, was extremely cooperative with Sun Bin. Sun Bin turned his wheelchair around and smiled. "You know everything, right?" "Yes. The enemy has begun to move." "Okay, then let's act according to plan." Sun Bin nodded. "I will lead the First Army to pursue the enemy and coordinate with the pincer strategy of the Eastern Punitive Expedition. General, you will lead the Second Army to the north and sweep through the enemy along the way. Then, you will attack Xiaozhou County. Strive to meet up with General Hua at Xiaozhou County." "Understood." Di Qing nodded. This plan had been formulated a long time ago. Sun Bin was just confirming it as usual. "General, remember this. You can be slow, but you can't be too fast," Sun Bin pointed out. "You must capture all the cities along the way. Don't let the enemy see through your intentions before the Imperial Guard Army advances into Xiaozhou County. No matter how fast the Imperial Guard Army was, they would still have to pass through the entirety of Xiaozhou County. Thus, they had to be given some time. Sun Bin's instructions were naturally to prevent alerting the enemy. "Don't worry, Commander-in-Chief. I will remember." Di Qing was a calm and wise general. "Then let's begin." Chapter 734. 19th of September, Whitestone City. In the darkness of the night, the teleportation array in the center of the city flashed with white light. The 150,000 soldiers of Lingnan City, as well as the 100,000 soldiers that had been hastily gathered, were quietly teleported over. There were also 50,000 reserve troops on standby, ready to be teleported over at any time. The vast army filled the inconspicuous city to the brim. An hour earlier, the entire city had been placed under martial law, allowing entry but not exit. At the entrance of the teleportation array, Ruan Ping summoned the leading general and solemnly instructed, "General, immediately arrange for soldiers to guard the various relay stations and teleportation arrays. Prohibit anyone from entering or leaving the relay stations or approaching the teleportation arrays. If anyone is found to be abnormal, kill them on the spot without interrogating them." "Understood." In the Battle of Zhaoqing, Ruan Ping had used a trick to successfully capture Tianchuan County from the inside. Now that they were in charge of defense, Ruan Ping naturally had to prevent the enemy from using the same trick on them. The purpose of guarding the relay station was to prevent the news from leaking out as much as possible. Of course, Ruan Ping's trick could not stop the mountain sea guards and black snake guards. That night, hummingbirds took off from a nameless corner and disappeared into the night. The next morning, the various armies of Shanghai City received the relevant information. City Lord's residence. Ruan Ping gathered with the various lords and the chief generals of the various territories. "Where's the enemy's Fan Lihua army?" This was the question that everyone was most concerned about. The intelligence officer reported, "Based on the enemy's speed, the Fan Lihua army will arrive outside the city by tomorrow afternoon at the latest." This afternoon, The scouts have already discovered the enemy's vanguard. Did they discover you? Ruan Ping asked. Absolutely not. The intelligence officer was very confident. After all, the surroundings of Whitestone City were their territory. If they could not even conceal themselves, the intelligence officer would not have the face to stand here and report to the various lords. In that case, let's act according to plan, Ruan Ping said. Yes. The generals saluted in unison. That night, Whitestone City was destined to be sleepless. They would weave an impenetrable spider web in the city and even outside the city, trapping the Fan Lihua army. Next, the group discussed specific tactics and only dispersed late at night. That night, Whitestone City was destined to be sleepless. In a small courtyard on the west side of the city lord's mansion, Ruan Ping stood in the courtyard, looking up at the moon, deep in thought. His eyes flashed with excitement and anticipation. If this battle was successful and the Fan Lihua army was wiped out, it would prove that their strategy was correct. In this way, they could replicate it once or even twice. The invincible army of Shanghai City was not invincible. Ouyang Shuo, I won't let you succeed. A trace of madness flashed across Ruan Ping's face. On the afternoon of the 19th, Kunming Commandery, the encampment of the 3rd Dragon Stallion Army Legion. The sky was cloudless, and the wind was gentle. At this moment, there was a mechanical roar in the air. Then, a giant dolphin flew over from afar. A dolphin flying in the sky. Those who raised their heads along the way were all dumbfounded by the spectacle. The soldiers of the 3rd Division who were training were no exception. They all looked up at the sky and pointed at it. If not for the military discipline, it would have been a mess. What is that? A big bird? Not everyone knew about dolphins. What the ancient people knew and saw, especially to ordinary people, could only be passed down through word of mouth. To these people who couldn't swim, they didn't know about the dolphin at all. A soldier from a fishing village said hesitantly, looking at its shape, it seems to be the dolphin that the old people in the village mentioned. What the hell? Haha, dolphin, you must be joking. Dolphin, although we don't know what it looks like, at least it's related to the sea. Have you ever seen an animal in the sea flying in the sky? After being choked like this, the youth from the fishing village also lost his confidence. Look, it's flying toward us. Oh no, it's not a spirit beast, right? Don't attack our camp. Quick, inform the archers. Idiot, quickly inform the general. Seeing the big bird flying closer and closer, the soldiers who had never seen such a thing panicked. What are you shouting for? Everyone, return to your positions. At this moment, the commanding officer stood up and began to maintain order. In the central camp, Zhang Liao received the news and walked out of his tent. He looked up at the sky and was dumbfounded by the big bird flying closer and closer. Could this be the Mo family's mechanical bird? Zhang Liao guessed. Just as Zhang Liao was wondering what to do, Ouyang Shuo walked over and said with a smile, General, there's no need to panic. That's our flying machine. Immediately clear a drill ground and wave the red flag. Yes, sir. Zhang Liao didn't think much and subconsciously carried out the military order. After that, he asked with a confused expression, My lord, the flying machine you mentioned just now, what is it? Ouyang Shuo smiled. He didn't blame Zhang Liao. Lingxi City had just been merged into Shanghai City, and the 7th Research Institute hadn't had time to educate the civil and military officials of Lingxi City on industrial knowledge. Simply put, it's a flying tool that can be freely controlled and piloted. It's a special item that I obtained from a foreign civilization during my previous voyage, Ouyang Shuo explained simply. I see. Zhang Liao suddenly understood. Although he was a military general, he was Bai Hua's confidant and knew a thing or two about Shanghai City's voyage. Coupled with Bai Hua's intentional nurturing, Zhang Liao wasn't really a noob in modern knowledge. Since the flying machine has arrived, I have to return to Shanghai City. The war in the southern border had already begun. The eastern, northern, and western battlefield had joined forces to fight. At this time, Ouyang Shuo had to return to Shanghai City to take charge and stabilize the morale of the army. The General Administration of Military Affairs had already set up a temporary headquarters in Shanghai City and was just waiting for Ouyang Shua to return. The most convenient way was naturally to directly pilot the flying machine. In just one day, Ouyang Shua could cross Zhenan County and return to Shanghai City. My lord is going back. Zhang Liao was a little surprised. That's right. Ouyang Shua smiled and nodded. General, I'll leave the defense of the Western Front to you. Although the Western Front was calm, it didn't mean that there was no war. Not to mention whether Yunnan city-state would take the opportunity to make some small moves. Di Chun and the others would probably actively urge Xin Fun and the others to face Shanghai City head-on. The 3rd Legion shouldered the heavy responsibility of guarding Kunming County, so they couldn't be careless. When Zhang Liao heard this, he immediately made a military pledge and vowed, "My lord, please rest assured. With the 3rd Legion, we won't let the enemy cross the border." Good. Ouyang Shua nodded. He admired Zhang Liao's spirit. In history, Zhang Liao was also a master of defense. His ability to resist pressure was very strong. After giving some instructions, Ouyang Shua didn't stay any longer. When he arrived at the drill ground, after a simple exchange with the pilot, he took out the purple magnetic or hanging in front of his chest and activated the flying machine. It directly rose into the sky and gradually disappeared. After witnessing this scene, the soldiers of the 3rd Legion immediately worshipped their lord as a true god. Their loyalty to him skyrocketed, and their estrangement with Shanghai City immediately disappeared without a trace. With such a lord, how could they, the soldiers, have any other extravagant desires? The sequelae left behind by the hasty annexation were magically eliminated because of this. If Ouyang Shua knew the details, he probably wouldn't know whether to laugh or cry. The pilot who sent the flying machine used a blue magnetic ore. It needed to stop midway to recharge, so it had already set off 2 days ago. Ouyang Shua's purple magnetic ore was different. It was enough to fly directly to Shanghai City. Driving the flying machine, Ouyang Shua roamed in the sky above the magnificent mountains and rivers of the China region. Looking at the undulating mountains and the dotted cities and villages, Ouyang Shua couldn't help but feel lofty. His mind was broadened, and he wanted to take all the land under his feet into his chest. With such lofty aspirations and such an experience, it was indeed an extraordinary journey. At noon the next day, Ouyang Shua returned to Shanghai City. Chapter 735. Shanghai City, General Military Affairs Department. Du Ruhui, Zhao Qua, and the newly appointed Xiahou Dun were all present at the headquarters of the Military Affairs Department. Other than that, the Military Intelligence Department, the War Department, and the Combat Readiness Division were all mobilized to participate. When Ouyang Shua walked into the command center, he saw a bustling scene. On the northernmost wall of the command hall hung a 9-meter-long and 5-meter-wide huge map. Impressively, it was the map of the southern border. From west to east, it included the South Cloud Province, South Sichuan Province, North Sichuan Province, South Xiangnan Province, South Ridge Province, Jiangchuan Province, and South Min Province, a total of 7 big provinces. Among them, Yunnan Province, Chuanan Province, and Lingnan Province are the most detailed, located in the center of the map. In the center of the hall, there was a giant sand table that was also 9 meters long and 5 meters wide. At that moment, the sand table was showing the most crucial battle of Lingnan. The land of the 3 counties of Lingnan city-state could be seen clearly. In particular, Whitestone City in Jiaozhou County was highlighted by a small red flag. Every once in a while, a piece of information would be sent to the command center. The staff officers of the War Department updated the sand table according to the intelligence reports so that Du Ruhui, Zhao Qua, and other bigwigs could make decisions. Jun Shang, Du Ruhui rushed over. Ouyang Shua's arrival instantly silenced the command center. Kuming, what's the situation? Du Ruhui pointed to Baishu City on the sand table and reported. Jun Shang, as expected, the enemy still chose to use the teleportation sniper tactic, and the first sniper location was Baishu City. Ouyang Shuo glanced at the terrain of Whitestone City and said with a smile, "Good choice of location." Yes. This time, they were prepared to cut off all means of retreat, gathering a total of 250,000 soldiers. I just received news that the Fan Lihua Corps has arrived outside Whitestone City and is setting up camp. The Fan Lihua army knew that Whitestone City was a trap, but they still pretended to arrive outside the city as if nothing had happened. As usual, they made the final preparations before attacking the city. Their purpose was obviously not to alert the enemy. Not to mention the Fan Lihua army. Even the Long-Live Sure army and Evil army showed no signs of moving closer to the Fan Lihua army. Only the first corps of the Brave Tiger army led by Sun Bin advanced bravely, advancing all the way to Whitestone City. All of this was to confuse the enemy. To be honest, this was very risky. The Fan Lihua army was required to hold off the attack of 250,000 allied troops before the other armies arrived. Fighting 1 against 3, he was indeed worried for Fan Lihua. This was because the Mountain Sea Guards had not succeeded in placing their pawns in the Alliance army. The Black Snake Guard and the Mountain Sea Guard had a clear division of labor. The Black Snake Guard spies were mainly players, while the Mountain Sea Guard spies were mainly NPCs. Therefore, it was easier for the Mountain Ocean Guards to infiltrate the enemy's ranks. 3 months ago, the Mountain Ocean Guards had planted more than 10 pawns in the Alliance. The 3 armies were waiting for one of their key chess pieces to play a decisive role. "Is there any news from number 32? Ouyang Shuo asked. Number 32 was one of the best spies in the Mountain Sea Guard, and he was the commander of the Allied army. Ouyang Shuo was even personally involved in the operation. Number 32 held a formation-breaking talisman in his hand, which was the key to this battle. Before Zhao Qing, Ruan Ping had used a formation-breaking talisman to take over Tianshuang County. Ouyang Shuo wanted to give him a taste of his own medicine. He wanted to use the formation-breaking talisman to destroy Whitestone City's teleportation formation, thereby completely locking the Allied forces in Whitestone City. This way, the battle in Lingnan would become a battle of annihilation. If they won this battle, the Lingnan province would be theirs. The situation in the China region was constantly changing, and there were too many variables. Ouyang Shuo did not want to play hide-and-seek with the Alliance army. Once they locked onto a target, they had to be killed. The teleportation portal was naturally the teleportation portal. However, it was not easy to destroy the teleportation portal when the enemy was on guard. Now, they could only hope that number 32 would be able to make a great contribution. Number 32 has sent a message. With the help of the other spies, it is his turn to guard the teleportation portal tonight. The opportunity to destroy the portal is tonight, Duru Hui reported with a smile. All right, then we'll wait. Ouyang Shuo was prepared to stay in the command center. He could not sleep until he received the exact news. The huge command center became busy again. Lingnan Province, Jiaozhou County, Whitestone City. The enemy had arrived on time, which made Ruan Ping and the others excited. Now, they just had to wait for the Fan Lihua army to attack the city. At that time, the 25 allied armies would give the enemy a huge surprise. Everything went smoothly. The only exception was that the Fan Lihua army took a little too long to prepare. The Fan Lihua army arrived at the southern plains outside the city at noon. An entire afternoon passed, but there was no movement at all. According to the spies, the enemy had been building a camp. When the sun rose, a huge camp had already been built on the plains outside the city. Isn't this too cautious? Some feudal lords were puzzled. According to the previous battle style of the Shanghai City Army, not to mention noon, even if they arrived outside the city in the afternoon, they would immediately attack the city after a short rest. Whitestone City's geographical location is different. It is normal for them to be cautious. That's right. No matter what, Fan Lihua is an emperor-level general. He is skilled in using troops. I'm afraid he will instinctively think that Whitestone City is a trap and will not attack the city rashly. The feudal lords subconsciously gave various reasonable explanations. For the entire afternoon, they hesitated several times, wondering if they should launch a surprise attack while the Fan Lihua army was still in a stable footing and defeat them in one fell swoop. In the end, they gave up on this tempting idea. First, if they launched a surprise attack, it would be equivalent to exposing their target, and it would be difficult for them to succeed. If they only defeated the Fan Lihua army instead of annihilating them, it would undoubtedly be a failure for the Allied army. After all, Shanghai City would not give them such an opportunity to ambush again and again. Second, the enemy was the Shanghai City army. The quality of the Shanghai City army was well known and recognized. Even if they were setting up camp, Ruan Ping and the others would not think that the enemy was not on guard at all. Even if they were setting up camp, Ruan Ping and the others would not think that the enemy was not on guard at all. Thus, the safest method was to wait for the enemy to attack the city and annihilate them. In a city, there were radical feudal lords and conservative feudal lords. When everyone gathered together to discuss a strategy, they would often choose the safer method. This was the advantage of collective decision-making, but also its disadvantage. The result of mutual constraints was that there would never be a radical and risky plan. In this way, it was equivalent to burying an excellent opportunity for the Allied army to turn the situation around. If the Allied army chose to attack in the afternoon, the Fan Lihua army could only resist. In a situation where there were no barracks, trenches, or other defensive fortifications, it was really unknown whether or not they could hold on. Night fell, and everything was silent. The Fan Lihua army camp outside the city was still burning the midnight oil, the tall barracks blocking the Allied spies' line of sight. Inside the camp, all kinds of fortifications were still being built in full swing. Along the wooden walls of the barracks, a large number of soldiers personally went into battle, digging trenches. Between the trenches, there were countless arrow towers and barricades. What was even more strange was that in the center of the barracks, the army was building another barracks overnight, similar to the inner city of the city. If the Allied spies saw this scene, they would probably immediately see the intentions of the Fan Lihua army. How was this a barracks prepared for attacking the city? It was clearly prepared to defend to the death. Around 6 o'clock in the evening, Baishur City. The army stationed at the teleportation portal welcomed a routine handover, checked the token, and passed by. The next officer on duty was a young general called Song Gui from Jiaozhou County's Huadong County. 3 months ago, he had joined Huadong County with the wilderness refugees and had been promoted to a brigade marshal with his military achievements. His background was clean. Ruan Ping and the others, including the leader of Huadong County, did not know that Song Gui was a spy carefully trained by the Mountain Sea Guards. He had mixed in with the refugees and naturally joined Huadong County. More than half of the Mountain Sea Guard spies used this method to infiltrate their targets. A full 3 hours passed, and everything in the city was as usual. The night grew darker, and only the faint moonlight shone down from the sky, illuminating the land around the teleportation portal. In the night, the faces of the soldiers became blurry. After standing guard for a full 3 hours, their bodies did not move at all, and their minds were highly focused. The attention of the soldiers began to fade, and their bodies were already protesting. At this moment, the sound of a small cart colliding with a stone slab could be heard on the street that was classified as a restricted area. Gulilu. The sound was unusually ear-piercing in the silent night. Who is it? This is a military restricted area. Unauthorized personnel are not allowed in. As expected, the small cart was quickly stopped by the soldiers outside. Greetings, sir. I'm here to deliver supper. The person pushing the cart was an old man with a hunched back and a flattering smile on his face. He looked humble and pitiful. The old man opened one of the wooden buckets, and a fragrant aroma wafted out. Sir, look at this freshly roasted chicken. It smells so good. Gulp. The soldier unconsciously swallowed his saliva. Who told you to deliver supper? Don't you know this is a restricted area? The soldier's attitude softened. It's me. At this moment, a voice came from behind him. The soldier was stunned. He turned around and saluted. Brigade Marshal. It was Song Gui. He exchanged a glance with the old man. then turned to the soldiers who were still standing guard and said with a smile, "You've all worked hard. Tonight, I'll pay out of my own pocket to treat everyone to supper. Don't stand on ceremony." All right. Since the brigade marshal had spoken, the soldiers who had been starving for the whole night were naturally happy. Come, come, come. Freshly roasted chicken. The old man pushed the small cart and walked among the soldiers. Like a magic trick, he took out freshly roasted chicken from the cart, and the aroma wafted out. "Don't stand on ceremony, sir. There's wine here. Do you want some to warm your stomach?" "Good job." The soldier laughed with satisfaction and gave a thumbs up. Good wine and roasted chicken were the most delicious food in the world. Was there any better enjoyment than this? Under the temptation of delicious food, the orderly soldiers immediately dispersed, and the scene became chaotic. Chapter 736. Amidst the chaos, Song Gue stealthily approached the transportation array. While no one was paying attention, Song Gue quickly took out the formation-breaking talisman and stuck it on the transportation array. A white light flashed, and the transportation array immediately stopped operating. The transportation array was originally forbidden, so no one had noticed the anomaly just now. Just as Song Gue stealthily left the transportation array, an angry roar suddenly came from the front. The anger in the roar could burn people from afar. "Bastards, what are you doing?" Raising his head, he saw Ruan Ping rushing over with his personal guards. For some reason, Ruan Ping had been restless all night and did not feel sleepy at all. For some reason, he wanted to bring his personal guards to check around the city. He did not expect to see a group of soldiers eating roast chicken and drinking wine when he arrived at the most important transportation array. How could he not be angry? "Who is your commanding officer? Tell him to come see me." Ruan Ping's face was gloomy, his eyes cold like a venomous snake that wanted to devour someone. When the surrounding soldiers heard this, they kept quiet out of fear, not daring to speak. "It's me." Song Gue successfully completed his mission and was in a good mood. However, he pretended to be fearful on the surface and stumbled over to Ruan Ping, trembling as he saluted. "Bastard." When Ruan Ping saw Song Gue's red face, he was so angry that he directly kicked him. Ugh, this kick was not light. Song Gue clutched his stomach and curled up in pain. When the surrounding soldiers saw this, they were furious. No matter what, Song Gue was their commanding officer. How could he be humiliated like this? There was no subordinate relationship between the alliance troops. Strictly speaking, Ruan Ping had no right to punish them. Seeing this, the personal guard behind Ruan Ping drew their weapons in unison with a whoosh, and they were ready for battle. The surrounding soldiers were even more furious. Some of the courageous ones also drew their weapons. The atmosphere on the street became heavy. It looked like a conflict was about to break out. Seeing this, Ruan Ping was unmoved. "Don't move." Amidst the commotion, Song Gue tried to straighten his body and stop his subordinates from acting recklessly. "Commander." The soldier was indignant. Song Gue waved his hand and saluted Ruan Ping again. "I have neglected my duty and am willing to be punished." Seeing this, Ruan Ping sized up the person in front of him for the first time. This person was not simple. "What's your name? Which territory do you belong to?" Ruan Ping asked. "Your Excellency, I am Song Gue from Huadong County. Are you interested in working under me?" Ruan Ping unexpectedly asked. His love for talent had been aroused, and he was actually trying to poach him in front of everyone. Seeing this, the surrounding soldiers looked at each other in dismay. This lowly general is humble. "Thank you for your favor. However, I am indebted to Huadong County for nurturing me, so I do not dare to join any other force. I hope Darren will understand." Ruan Ping, on the other hand, liked him even more. His smile deepened. Loyal and devoted. Not bad. But Ruan Ping's expression changed. His expression was somber. "You neglected your duty, so you have no choice but to be punished. Guard, here." 30 lashes carried out immediately. Ruan Ping didn't give any face. "Yes, sir." "Behead the one who delivered the roasted chicken. I've already made it clear that this is a forbidden area. Anyone who dares to approach is to be killed. Wan Ping said. When Song Guigong heard this, his body stiffened and his fists clenched. Gritting his teeth, he quietly let go. That's a comrade who fought alongside him. In ancient times, whipping was extremely cruel. After 30 lashes, Song Guigong couldn't even stand and was carried back to the barracks to recuperate. At the same time, the exploration team, led by Song Guigong, was also replaced. After this interlude, the night returned to tranquility. Just as Wan Ping was about to leave, the exploration team that came to take over checked the teleportation array according to the rules. Upon doing so, they were scared silly. Darren, bad news. What happened? Wan Ping's heart trembled. The teleportation array is broken. What? Wan Ping seemed to have gone mad. He instantly rushed to the teleportation array. Looking at the motionless teleportation array, his face instantly turned pale. He said in a daze, "It's an array-breaking talisman. Damn it, it must be Song Guigong." Wan Ping's eyes were bloodshot. "Guards, here, arrest Song Guisuo and interrogate him through torture." "Yes, sir." Could it be that all of this was a trap set up by Shanghai City? Wan Ping's heart suddenly palpitated. He couldn't help but tremble. The news of the teleportation array being destroyed swept through the entire Allied army like a hurricane. The feudal lords of the city instantly felt a chill run down their spines. Baishur City, the mayor's residence. The feudal lords and their generals gathered for a temporary meeting. Before the meeting began, the feudal lord of Huadong County had already been locked up and was being interrogated in prison. Wan Ping and the others suspected that the feudal lord of Huadong County was also an accomplice, perhaps even a mastermind. He was a pawn of Shanghai City, embedded in the city. The atmosphere in the meeting hall was close to freezing point. No one was in the mood to talk. The destroyed teleportation array was like a ghost in the dark night, looming over the meeting hall, unable to dissipate. The feudal lords weren't fools. It was easy for them to guess that everything they had done had been under the surveillance of Shanghai City. They were at the mercy of the enemy. It was laughable that they still thought of themselves as smart, fantasizing about dealing a fatal blow to the enemy. If that's the case, aren't we just a bunch of clowns? The feudal lords mocked themselves in their hearts. All of their passion, all of their hopes, everything seemed to fade away, disappearing without a trace. All that was left was an empty shell without a soul. In an instant, the world had turned upside down. They had become a group of people without a tomorrow. Just a moment ago, they were the cream of the crop in the wilderness of the China region, enjoying the respect of tens of thousands of people. "Everyone, say something." Wan Ping's voice was hoarse and full of bitterness. "What else can we say? Yes, it's useless to say anything. We can't win, but we can't just give up." Wan Ping was exasperated. In the face of Wan Ping's accusations, the feudal lords were indifferent, their faces expressionless. There was nothing more sorrowful than a dead heart. This was their current situation. "Let me say something." The feudal lord of Baishur City suddenly stood up. There's a small path in the mountains behind Baishur City that leads outside. However, the path is rugged and steep, and it's desolate and uninhabited. It's impossible for a large army to get through, but it's still possible to escape with a small group of soldiers. Is that so? There was no joy in Wan Ping's eyes. Since when did they have to rely on a small path to escape? The other feudal lords felt the same way. Without an army, what was the point of escaping? I say, everyone, don't be depressed. At least we can return to the territory, take away the territory's wealth, and become rich in the main city. The feudal lord of Baishur City consoled. He was quite optimistic. That's the only way. The feudal lords smiled bitterly in agreement. They were all ambitious people. Become rich? How ironic. I say, since we have a path of retreat, we can't just be cowards. Don't forget, we still have 250,000 soldiers in our hands. If we really charge out, can a woman like Fan Lihua stop us? However, Wan Ping was unwilling to give up. He tried his best to pull himself together and shouted, "Even if we fail, we still have to take a bite out of Shanghai City. Moreover, we are not at the end of the line yet." That's right. If we retreat just like this, won't Shanghai City be the same? Then let the Fan Lihua army be buried with us. They must be buried with us. A sense of determination rose in the meeting hall. After leaving a path of retreat, the feudal lords began their final journey of revenge. Tomorrow morning, let's not do any ambushes. The enemy won't fall for it. I suggest that we directly leave the city and launch a frontal assault. We will attack the Fan Lihua army in a dignified manner. I don't believe that our 250,000 soldiers can't deal with a group of women. Seconded. Good. This is the final glory of our Langnan city. We definitely can't mess it up. Defend the glory. Fight for the glory. In the conference hall, the feudal lords were united against the enemy, and their blood was boiling again. However, this blood was not burning with passion, but with life. Like a rootless tree, it was not endless, and it would dry up. Because there was no strategy to discuss, the conference quickly dispersed. Baishur City became quiet again. The difference was that after the feudal lords returned, they all gathered their trusted aides and secretly arranged for their retreat. The timid ones chose to retreat from the back of the mountain, while the bold ones prepared to retreat from the battlefield. Don't be fooled by what they said during the conference. If they could return to the territory alive, smoothly take away the wealth, and live a stable life, it would be very good. At least it was better than nothing, right? That was why people said that the human heart was the most complicated. Especially for the feudal lords, no one's heart was pure. The truly pure feudal lords had long been eliminated in the territory wars. That night, there was another episode. Song Goe and the Huadong County's feudal lord were tortured to death in the torture. The Huadong County's feudal lord was indeed innocent, but at this time, no one went to investigate his identity. If he wanted to blame someone, he could only blame his bad luck. Song Gui's sacrifice was really heartbreaking. On this very night, another nameless hero sacrificed his life for Shanghai City's rise to prominence. As long as the war continued, as long as Ouyang Shua's ambition remained, as long as Shanghai City continued to expand, such unknown heroes would appear one after another. Reality was so cruel. Fortunately, the night would eventually disperse, and dawn would come. When the sun rose again, it would be a brand new day. P.S. In the April monthly votes battle, with the support of our brothers, we managed to maintain 9th place in the categorized category. Sheng Xiao will fulfill his promise and add 2 chapters. The specific update time is yet to be determined. Sheng Xiao has fulfilled all of his previous promises. His character is still guaranteed, and he will definitely make up for the promised updates. Brothers, please rest assured. After midnight, the May monthly votes battle will begin, and the flames of war will continue to burn. The double monthly votes will continue for another week. Brothers, please continue to support us and cast your precious monthly votes. Sheng Xiao kowtows. Thank you, brothers, for your support. Chapter 737. 21st of September, Whitestone City. R-N-E-N. Rainin, the orange sun rose from the mountains in the east and slowly climbed up the mountain, passing over the highest peak. It shone brightly on Whitestone City, dyeing the green ancient city with a layer of golden light. Ruan Ping and the other lords stood on the tower of the south gate, watching the allied army slowly walk out from the east, west, and west gates. Their expressions were solemn, their faces shining with sincerity. If Shanghai City doesn't allow us to have a tomorrow, then we will kill our way to a tomorrow, Ruan Ping said. The 3 armies were like 3 giant dragons, converging on the plains outside the south gate, slowly forming a huge battle formation. The grass outside the city was instantly flattened by the army, without a trace of color. Even so, there were still troops waiting to gather in the city. The vast plains outside the city could not accommodate all the allied army. At the front of the formation was the 6,000-strong army of Huadong County. The lord of Huadong County had been tortured to death last night, but his army had stayed behind. Because they did not obtain any useful information, Ruan Ping and the rest knew they were in the wrong, but they did not dare to keep the army of Huadong County by their side. The best way was to push them to the front line. The 6,000-strong army of Huadong County was the best suicide squad. For this, Ruan Ping and the rest had arranged as many as 10,000 people to supervise them. If the army of Huadong County made any strange movements, they would be shot into hedgehogs. Fan Lihua Army's encampment. The abnormality of Whitestone City had the Fan Lihua Army on high alert. Late last night, Fan Lihua had already received a message from the spies in Whitestone City, knowing that Number 32 had successfully destroyed the enemy's teleportation formation. Fan Lihua heaved a sigh of relief, but she was also shocked. She knew very well that tomorrow would be the most difficult day for the Fan Lihua Army. The 10,000 Years Army, the Evil Coming Army, and the Sunbin Army had already received orders and were rushing to Whitestone City. The nearest 10,000 Years Army would need to wait until tomorrow afternoon at the earliest to reach the battlefield. The furthest Sunbin Army would need to wait until the afternoon of the 22nd. Whether or not they could resist the desperate struggle of the 250,000 Allied army and hold on for this most crucial day would be the biggest and most crucial parade since the formation of the Fan Lihua Army. Furthermore, it was a battle for Fan Lihua's reputation. Fan Lihua had to prove to the vast army of Shanghai City that she was worthy of Jun Shang's high regard and trust. Pass down my orders. All divisions are to hold their positions and follow the defensive plan we've drawn up earlier. Make sure to maximize the effectiveness of every fortification. Whoever loses their position will be punished by military law. Fan Lihua's expression was stern. Yes, sir. The camp, which had been repaired overnight, was like a vicious beast waiting for its enemies to take the bait. At the last military conference last night, Fan Lihua had already said, if the enemy is allowed to pass through the Third Army's defensive line and successfully break through, I will take the blame and resign. But before I resign, I will not hesitate to remove the hats of all the division commanders and brigade marshals. Fan Lihua's light gaze swept over without a trace of killing intent, but it made all the men in the tent feel a chill, their hair standing on end. One of the regiment commanders recalled the incident and described the scene very accurately. After being swept by the general, the boiling blood in my body instantly cooled down and I felt a chill run through my heart. It felt like an invisible sword energy was pressed against our necks, and if we made the slightest mistake, our heads would fall to the ground. At that time, we were thinking that even if we died on the defensive line, we couldn't lose our position. Fan Lihua's power in the Third Army was evident. The war horn officially sounded. The 250,000 Allied troops formed a battle formation and pounced towards the enemy's camp with the beat of the drums. Before they even got close, they could feel an invincible aura that could crush everything. The tent on the other side was silent, without a trace of noise. The silence was somewhat frightening. Inside the camp, all the soldiers held their breaths, ready to reap the lives of the enemy at any time. As soon as the Allied troops entered the firing range, a sky full of arrows rained down. The dense black rain of arrows was innumerable, layer upon layer, forming a steel torrent. Like a black curtain, it suddenly fell from the sky and set off a monstrous massacre in the Allied troops' position. Wherever the rain of arrows passed, there was not a single survivor. Corpses littered the ground. Instant kill. Because the rain of arrows was too dense, there was no way for the soldiers to dodge. The blade and shield soldiers were still fine. They had shields to protect them, and if they were lucky, they could escape. The archers, on the other hand, died under the rain of arrows before they could even retaliate. Huadong County's 6,000 soldiers were instantly wiped out. Charge! The Allied commander was not afraid of death and commanded the army to charge forward. Because they were attacking a camp, the Allied cavalry could not play a role, and they were all deployed to the two sides as guards. The real main force of the siege was the 100,000 blade and shield soldiers. They braved the rain of arrows and launched their strongest charge. The vast army was like a black tide, instantly drowning the camp. After paying a heavy price, countless sword and shield soldiers stepped on the simple siege ladders and climbed up the wooden walls of the tents one after another, starting a fierce battle with the Fan Lihua army that was stationed here. As soon as the battle began, both sides entered the most intense and cruel close combat. A camp was, after all, just a camp. No matter how well prepared the Fan Lihua army was, it was impossible for them to bring fierce fire oil, rocks, logs, cannons, and other common defensive supplies. At most, they had placed a large number of ballistae on the wooden walls. Below the wooden walls, there were hundreds of catapults. Be it the ballistae or the catapults, they were originally prepared by the Third Army for siege, but now they were being used for defense. One could imagine the damage they caused to the Allied army. On the battlefield, waves after waves of Allied soldiers fearlessly charged up the wooden walls, but they were beaten back by the Third Army. The corpses of the dead soldiers were like rain, falling continuously at the foot of the wooden walls. In the blink of an eye, there was a pile of corpses at the foot of the wooden walls. And behind the attacking soldiers, the rain of arrows and catapults continued to cause damage. Because the Allied army was too densely packed, the fireballs thrown by the catapults were able to cause a wave in the army formation. Usually, a single fireball could kill a large group. An entire hour passed, and the camp was still as stable as Mount Tai, but more than 20,000 Allied soldiers were completely buried here. The brutality of the battle was beyond everyone's imagination. Stationed on the wooden walls was the Third Army's 1st Division, formerly known as the Lijiao County Guard Division, the fiercest among the major guard divisions. In the Battle of Zhaoqing, the Lijiao County Guard Division had shown its skills, and even the God of Slaughter, Bai Qi, had praised it. After being integrated into the Third Army, the division had undergone another transformation, becoming even more ferocious, and could be considered a flag of the Third Army. It was precisely because of this that Fan Lihua handed the most difficult task to the First Army. The current performance of the battle showed that the First Army lived up to its illustrious reputation. Losing the first battle made the Allied army stifle a sigh of relief. Thinking of the armies of the lords watching the battle silently from the city tower, the general did not dare to be negligent. Pass down the order. Have the assault brigade go up. The Allied commander was ready to use the most elite assault troops to attack. Yes, sir. A total of 3 assault brigades received the order and immediately went up to meet them. Like a trident, they instantly pierced into the heart of the wooden wall. The extraordinariness of the assault brigade was soon reflected. This was a group of opponents who were on par with the 1st Division, and with the cooperation of countless Allied forces, they were able to suppress the 1st Division, which had already suffered heavy casualties. The opportunity to break through the first line of defense was right in front of them. Good. Continue to press forward. The Allied commander was excited, and the army was sent to the front line as if it was free. This made things even more difficult for the First Army. Once they passed a certain critical point, the casualties of the First Army would immediately skyrocket. In a tower in the inner circle of tents, "General, let the First Army withdraw. They can't hold on any longer." The adjutant reminded Fan Lihua. Fan Lihua glanced at the hourglass in front of her, her expression determined. Wait a little longer. The time that the first line of defense could hold on was still half an hour away from Fan Lihua's expectations. "General, the First Army has been defeated. Leave some seeds for them. Even if all of them are destroyed, they have to hold on." Fan Lihua was unmoved. It was not that she was hardened, but she was carrying the entire army on her shoulders and even the key to the victory of the entire Lingnan War. She could not afford to be soft-hearted. The First Army must hold on. The wooden wall. The killing continued, and people were falling at every moment. With their tenacious willpower and well-trained daily, the First Army managed to hold on under the attack of the Allied Assault Brigade, although they were on the verge of collapse. However, this kind of perseverance could not last for long. The key to the victory of the war ultimately depended on the difference in military strength between the two sides. It was not something that could be completely reversed by relying on morale alone. Up until now, almost every soldier in the First Division had been wounded. "Boss, The general wants us to hold on for another half an hour. The messenger ran over. The division commander, Zhao Yin, was also covered in blood. Upon receiving the military order, he grinned, looked around at his comrades, and said, "Brothers, did you hear that? The general is not very satisfied with us. Damn it. Even if we die, we must not let down the prestige of the First Army. Don't you think so? Come on, boss, that's your prestige. Are you afraid of not completing the mission and going back to be punished by the general?" Ha! The surrounding brigade commanders did not buy it and did not give face to Zhao Yin. F***ck off. Zhao Yin also knew the character of his general and said, "Let's not waste any more time. Isn't it just risking our lives? We are not afraid of that. We cannot let the bastards of the other divisions laugh at us, and we cannot let the enemy be complacent. If we really can't hold on for half an hour, I will accompany you to death. Boss, you are not a beauty. We don't need you to accompany us." F***ck off. F***ck off. Zhao Yin kicked them, raised his sword, and charged forward. This time, they were really risking their lives. Chapter 738. Zhao Yin had fulfilled his promise. The first division had held on for the most difficult half an hour, but the price they paid was that less than 2,000 people of the entire division had successfully retreated. The remaining 10,000 or so of the best soldiers had all died on the spot. The division commander, Zhao Yin, was seriously injured and unconscious. He was protected by his personal guard from the battlefield and luckily survived. With the retreat of the first division, the first line of defense of the camp was officially broken. The price the Allied forces had paid was the loss of more than 40,000 soldiers. The wooden wall was piled with corpses, making it difficult to pass through. The blood directly dyed the wooden wall bright red. The Allied commander breathed a sigh of relief after taking down the wooden wall. Logically speaking, when a camp's wooden wall fell, it basically lost its defensive ability. In the following close combat, the Allies had an absolute advantage in terms of military strength. The Allied commander was confident that they could take down the camp within a day. Who would have thought that after crossing the wooden wall, they would see such a scene? They saw that about 100 meters away from the first wooden wall, a second wooden wall had been erected. In the open space between the two walls, there was a 1.5-meter deep trench every 5 meters. Between the trenches, there were also tunnels that connected the trenches vertically, forming a complete defensive system. Barricades, arrow towers, and other fortifications were dotted like stars in the sky. At each key point, there were 3 bows and 8 bulls ballistae or catapults. What was even more terrifying was that there were thousands of archers hidden in the trenches. This was the second line of defense of the camp, jointly guarded by the 3rd Division and the 2nd Division of the 3rd Division. Due to the limited time to build the camp, Fan Lihua's design for the camp wasn't the usual square, but a long and narrow strip along the east and west. The entire camp basically blocked the Allied army's way south. The Allied army couldn't break through even if they wanted to. They had to completely uproot the camp before they could pass. For this reason, Fan Lihua only deployed a large number of troops to the front, and at the same time arranged for the 5th Division to be responsible for covering the 2 flanks. The 4th Division was responsible for guarding the second wooden wall, which was also the last line of defense of the camp. There wasn't even enough time to erect a complete wooden wall at the back of the camp. Such an arrangement could be said to have utilized the resources to the extreme, achieving the optimal deployment of troops. The 3 lines of defense were interlinked, advancing layer by layer, forming a huge chain formation. One of the reasons why famous generals were famous was because of this. Whether it was marching arrangements, logistical calculations, or setting up camps, they were all proficient in all of them. Of course, the scientific organization of Shanghai City's army also played a big role. It was precisely because every division was equipped with a specialized engineering unit that they were able to build such a stronghold so quickly. This was a huge problem for the alliance. "General, what should we do?" the adjutant asked. The Allied commander's face darkened, and he said in a deep voice, "What else can we do? Let's attack." After a short rest, the Allied forces launched their second wave of attack. Since the beginning of the battle, the attacks had not been going well. The vast army crossed the wooden wall and entered the open space, engaging in close combat with the sword and shield soldiers guarding the area. At the same time, they had to withstand the surprise attacks from the archers in the trenches. With the cover of the trenches, the crossbowmen were merciless meat reapers. Each of them turned into a sharpshooter and shot accurately at the enemies on the battlefield. From time to time, there would be arrow towers and ballistae providing cover. Therefore, it was extremely difficult for the Allied forces to advance. Almost every trench was built with human lives. What was even more speechless was that sometimes a trench that had been taken with great difficulty would be taken back by the enemy in the blink of an eye. At one time, the two armies went back and forth around the trenches 4 times. On the second wooden wall, Fan Lihua looked down from above. From time to time, she would flexibly mobilize the army according to the rhythm of the battlefield. She would command the crossbowmen in the trenches to concentrate their firepower and annihilate the toughest enemy. The secret of Fan Lihua's command was in the 5 colored flags. Every trench in the defensive area had been divided into 3 sections in advance: east, west, and west. Therefore, each section had a specific area number. Through different combinations of flags, Fan Lihua could convey different military orders. She could even do some of the more complicated military orders, such as commanding the crossbowmen in the middle of the second trench to support the west. There were special messengers in the trenches who would timely change the target of attack according to the command of the colored flags. In this way, the entire command was like a beautiful concert. Every note was a sharp killing weapon. Every melody was a ghost song that took away lives. Although the music was beautiful, the scene was extremely cruel. Under this formation, the vast Allied army became restricted and could not display their advantage in terms of military strength. Close to 100,000 cavalrymen became like decorations and did nothing. Until noon, the second line of defense was still as stable as a rock. The terrifying thing was that another 20,000 Allied soldiers had been completely buried here. In just one morning, a fifth of the 250,000 Allied soldiers had been wiped out. More than 70% of them had died in the hands of the crossbowmen. According to incomplete statistics, in just one morning, the 3rd Legion had used up 150,000 arrows. If not for the perfect logistics system established by Shanghai City's combat division, this alone would have been very difficult. If one did not experience it personally, one would not be able to imagine the cruelty of war. Behind the 50,000 dead soldiers were 50,000 families, and more than 200,000 people were implicated. The total population was comparable to that of 2 fully populated third-class counties. In the wilderness, this was extremely terrifying. In just one morning, the war had destroyed the dreams of 50,000 families. Baishur City, on top of the Southern Gate Tower. What's going on? There's no progress at all? Ruan Ping summoned the frontline commander and scolded him. In the eyes of Ruan Ping and the others, taking down the wooden wall was not a battle achievement. This general is ashamed. The Allied commander did not dare to refute. Don't be stingy with your troops. Press forward with all your strength. We must break through the enemy's camp in the afternoon, Ruan Ping ordered. There were some things that Ruan Ping could not say too directly. He could not tell the frontline commander that the lords were not stingy with their troops and that their goal was not to win, but to destroy the Fan Lihua army and take revenge on Shanghai City. If he really said that, the frontline troops would immediately be in chaos. NPC soldiers were not just a pile of data. Every soldier had their own thoughts and complete experiences. If they knew the calculations behind this war, they would probably lose all fighting spirit. How could a group of soldiers without fighting spirit talk about defeating the enemy? Yes, sir. The Allied commander's voice was hoarse. He seemed to have noticed something from the strange expressions of the lords. His heart turned cold, and he did not dare to continue thinking about it. Looking at the commander's back, Ruan Ping was a little lost in thought. It was not that Ruan Ping and the other lords were radical, but that they understood their opponent, Shanghai City, very well. This was especially true after the destruction of the teleportation formation this time around. Shanghai City's actions were bold and unconstrained, but they were also extremely meticulous. Once they attacked, they would not give the enemy a chance to turn the tables. They would use all their strength to consolidate the fruits of victory. As such, the Allied forces did not have much time left. Ruan Ping was really worried that if they dragged on, the other armies of Shanghai City would already be at the city. Facing such an opponent, Ruan Ping did not dare to have any thoughts of luck. If we can fight, then fight. In the afternoon, the war continued. With Ruan Ping's words, the Allied commander steeled his heart and decided to use his troops to buy time. For this, the commander did not hesitate to arrange for a team of supervisors to force the soldiers to charge forward. Anyone who dares to retreat will be killed without mercy. Apart from this, the commander also set up a reward. Whoever is the first to reach the second wooden wall will be rewarded with 5,000 gold coins and promoted to brigade commander. With such a generous reward, there would definitely be brave men. The Allied soldiers who did not know what was going on howled as they stepped on the corpses of their companions and charged forward. No matter how fierce the rain of arrows was, it could not stop their desire for glory and wealth. The soldiers of the Third Army clearly felt that the enemy's attacks were becoming fiercer. What a bunch of freaks! The commander of the Second Army was Song Jia's younger brother, Song Wu. Although Song Wu was stupid, he was really a fierce general. For the entire morning, Song Wu charged at the front line. During the battle, he was stabbed in the thigh by the enemy, and after bandaging the wound, he rushed back. Other people did not leave the front line with light injuries, but Song Wu did not leave the battlefield even when he was heavily injured. If not for the unique physique of players and Song Wu's deep internal energy, he probably would not have been able to hold on. In the afternoon, it was still the same. Seeing that the Allied forces had suffered such heavy casualties, they still charged forward. Song Wu could not understand. This was the fundamental difference between the armies of the wilderness and the armies of ancient times. The armies of Shanghai City were all professional soldiers, and the elites of the other territories were the same. The feudal lords were not fools. They knew that if they did not form professional armies, they would not be able to stand on the same level as the armies of the other territories. Because of this, the war in the wilderness was far crueler than in ancient times. For example, the Allied forces had lost 1/5 of their troops, but they still maintained high morale. Damn it, they are really going all out. Song Wu spat. The last division commander to say this was Zhao Yin of the First Army. Until now, Zhao Yin had not woken up yet. He just did not know what kind of fate the Second Army and Third Army would face. The fierce fighting was endless. The air was filled with a strong smell of blood. If it was an ordinary person, they would vomit when they smelled it. Even some of the soldiers who were still fighting couldn't stand such a strong smell. Of course, there were also exceptions. Some soldiers with special physiques, under the stimulation of blood energy, were filled with killing intent. Their blood boiled, and they gradually lost their minds. All that was left was the desire to kill. This war was entering the most critical moment. As the saying goes, the first drum of spirit, the second was weak, and the third was exhausted. This was the alliance's most intense, most reckless, and most morale-boosting wave of attack. Now, it all depended on whether the Third Army could withstand this wave. Success or failure depended on this. Chapter 739. It was the sunset glow again. The evening glow filled the sky. Birds flew across the sky, leaving behind faint shadows. The battlefield beneath the sky was in a mess. Smoke curled up in spirals, and the smell of blood rose into the air, condensing into blood-colored clouds in midair that didn't disperse for a long time, and they formed an extremely dazzling contrast with the orange glow of the sunset. The trench in the middle of the camp had been completely covered by mountains of corpses and seas of blood. There was no longer a familiar figure. Looking across the long and narrow battlefield, all one could see were corpses and broken weapons. The barricades had been smashed into smithereens, and the exquisite three-bow, eight-bull bed crossbows and catapults had also been completely destroyed. They could no longer function and were abandoned on the battlefield, with no one paying any attention to them. The arrow towers were either cut down directly or were still emitting wisps of smoke. The densely packed arrows were stuck all over the ground, and there was practically no space left. Occasionally, there would be one or two survivors soaking in blood and moaning helplessly, waiting for death to come. The battle in the afternoon had exhausted both sides. Another 40 to 50,000 soldiers had completely fallen here, sacrificing themselves heroically and bidding farewell to their youth and passion. The entire battlefield was like a huge slaughterhouse. The butchers were none other than the soldiers of both sides. While they were trying their best to kill the enemy, they had also become prey on the chopping board. Fortunately, we have finally taken it down. The Allied commander looked at the messy battlefield and secretly heaved a sigh of relief. After paying a huge sacrifice, the Allied forces finally defeated the defending troops of the enemy and completely took over the second line of defense. The tenacity of the Third Army exceeded the commander's imagination. What kind of enemy is this? They are not afraid of death and are capable in battle. They are truly an iron army. In this battle, the Second Army and Third Army of the Third Army had lost 30% of their forces, nearly 8,000 soldiers. If not for the cover of the trench, the number of casualties would have increased by at least 20%. At the last moment, Fan Lihua ordered the two armies to abandon their positions and retreat to the second wooden wall. For the Third Army, they had no way out. The only thing they could do was to defend the second wooden wall to the death and endure the most difficult period of time. As long as they could defend it, it would be the greatest victory. In order to achieve this strategic goal, any sacrifice would be worth it. Pass down the order, continue the attack. The Allied commander looked up at the sky. Although the sky was already densely covered with sunset, the sky was not dark yet. The mission given to him by the lords was not to take down the second line of defense of the enemy's camp, but to take down the entire camp. Therefore, the Allied forces had to use the last bit of time they had to break through the second wooden wall in one go. Victory is at hand. The commander muttered to himself as if he wanted to strengthen his confidence. The war horn sounded again. The exhausted Allied soldiers climbed up from the ground one by one, as if they were zombies. When the war had just come to an end, the exhausted Allied soldiers no longer had any scruples. They directly laid down on the pile of corpses and rested. For the experienced veterans, making the most of their time to recover their stamina would increase their chances of survival. Compared to survival, mountains of corpses and seas of blood were nothing. They had no time to think about it now. Even the weakest soldier was used to the smell of blood on the battlefield. Like zombies, the soldiers rose from the graveyard and gripped the weapons in their hands tightly. The bugle horns sounded, and their eyes shone with a bloodthirsty light. Kill! The vast Allied forces once again charged to the front line. In order to take down the second wooden wall, the Allied commander could be said to have put in a lot of effort. Outside the battlefield, there was a reserve force of 30,000 people. They had not entered the battlefield since the beginning and had rested for an entire day. At the crucial moment, the commander did not hesitate to send this reserve force into the battlefield in order to launch the deadliest attack on the enemy camp. As soon as the war began, the 30,000 rested new soldiers charged at the front, trying to break through the third line of defense of the camp in one go with their abundant energy. Unfortunately, the Allied forces were facing the famous General Fan Lihua, a general who was many times more brilliant than the Allied commander. In every major battle, reserve forces must be left behind, even if it is a 1,000-man team. Grasping and using the reserve forces at the right time is very important to seize the initiative in battle and obtain victory. How could Fan Lihua not understand this simple logic that even the Allied commander understood? The first person in China to think about the reserve forces was the commander of the stalwart tiger army, Sun Bin. Sun Tzu said, "When using a formation, there are three parts. The C formation has a front, the C formation has a back. All move according to the order. Fight 1, defend 2. Attack the enemy with 1, retreat with 2. When the enemy is weak and confused, choose the soldiers first and take advantage of it. When the enemy is strong, use the soldiers first to lure them." What he meant was that the army should be distributed rationally, and not all the troops should be sent in at once. In the battle in the afternoon, even at the most tragic time, Fan Lihua did not arrange for the 4th Division, which was stationed at the second wooden wall, to go forward to help. Her purpose was to guard against the Allied forces' surprise attack. As it turned out, Fan Lihua's choice was very wise. The soldiers of the 4th Division had watched their brothers of the 1st Division die in the morning, and in the afternoon, they had witnessed the bloody battle of the 2nd and 3rd Divisions. The soldiers had long been holding back their energy, and now it was finally their turn to go on the battlefield. They said to the soldiers of the 3 major divisions who had retreated, "Brothers, leave the next position to us. We're counting on you." The short conversation reflected the invincible spirit of the army of Shanghai City. The last battle before nightfall slowly began. This battle would not only determine the fate of the two sides, but also the fate of the entire Lingnan city and even the structure of the entire southern border. It would change because of this battle. Rows of torches lit up at the top of the white stone city, illuminating the front of the city. Ruan Ping and the other lords did not leave the city tower for the whole day, watching the progress of the battle uneasily. Can we still win? Some lords began to waver. The Fan Lihua army in front of them was simply a monster with an immortal body. Before the battle, no one could have imagined that the enemy would be able to block an army of 250,000 soldiers outside the plains with just a makeshift camp, rendering them unable to move. No one would believe it if they said it. But the bloody truth was placed in front of them, and they had no choice but to believe it. Therefore, the lords were not confident that the Allied forces could break through the last line of defense, at least not today. Seeing that night was approaching, the Allied forces had less than 2 hours left. It's difficult. The lords' eyes began to flicker. Some of the originally resolute lords were already secretly plotting a way out. Ruan Ping noticed that 5 or 6 lords standing at the top of the city wall had unknowingly left. Some lords saw that their troops had been destroyed on the battlefield and were unwilling to stay any longer, so they left through the back mountain path in advance. Some lords were purely cowardly and did not have any expectations for this battle at all, so they left with their personal guards in advance. After all, the path was just a path, and it was difficult. If everyone left like a swarm of bees, who knew what kind of nonsense would occur? Rather than that, it was better to leave early. At the very least, they did not have to line up. Moreover, the earlier they left, the easier it would be for them to pack up after returning to their territories. The lords who remained at the top of the city wall, apart from those with backbone and courage, were the downtrodden people whose territories had long since fallen under the iron hooves of the Shanghai City army. These lords were the most miserable. They could not even pack up their belongings and go to the royal city to become rich people. The only bargaining chip in their hands was the army outside the city. As for the pitiful people who had lost their armies, they had long committed suicide. Just as the various lords were lost in their thoughts, a rumbling sound suddenly came from the distant horizon. Raising his head to look, he saw a vast and boundless army. Under the afterglow of the setting sun, they swiftly and firmly marched towards White Stone City with an invincible aura. The huge golden dragon flag was dazzling. It's the Shanghai City Army. The lords recognized it at a glance. It was the vanguard of the 10,000 years Sure Army. They had finally arrived at White Stone City at the appointed time. It's over. Some lords closed their eyes, unable to bear to witness the tragedy that was about to happen. Even more lords did not say a word and directly left the city wall, disappearing without a trace. The Fan Lihua army alone was enough to make the Allied army suffer. With the addition of the 10,000-year Sure army, the Allied army had no chance of breaking through. It could be imagined that there would be even more armies converging on Whitestone City. There was no point in staying any longer. The lords did not want to stay and humiliate themselves. Leaving was the best choice. If they did not leave now, they would not be able to leave even if they wanted to. For a moment, before the 10,000-year Sure army reached the front lines, the huge city wall became empty. It was not just the lords who left, but also their personal guards. In the end, Ruan Ping was the only one left in the city wall. He stood there alone, his face pale. Ruan Ping did not want to leave. He had already deserted once in the Battle of Zhaoqing. He did not want to desert in front of Shanghai City a second time. That was his last bit of dignity. Perhaps there would be a miracle? The arrival of the 10,000-year Sure army did not only shock the lords on the city wall. It was also a huge blow to the Allied army. The attack on the second wooden wall was not going smoothly to begin with. Who would have thought that the enemy would send reinforcements at this critical juncture? The Allied army's commander had a pained expression. He raised his head and looked at the empty city wall. He sighed in his heart. In the end, he could not bear to send his soldiers to die for nothing. This was the first time that the Allied army's commander had ordered a retreat without receiving any orders. The Allied soldiers, whose morale had already been greatly reduced, did not hesitate at all when they heard the drums of retreat. They scrambled to leave the battlefield, afraid that they would not be able to run fast enough. As for the soldiers of the 4th Division stationed on the wooden wall, they also tacitly stopped shooting. Fan Lihua was very clear that the Allied army had already lost the ability to resist. Since that was the case, it was better not to kill for no reason. It could also be considered as leaving some seeds for the future reorganization of the army. None of the famous generals were truly bloodthirsty people. Killing was only a means, not an end. Chapter 740. As the Sure Wanshui army arrived at the battlefield, the Battle of Baishur City came to an end. No one knew if it was to atone for his sins or to protect his last bit of dignity. That night, knowing that there was no hope for a comeback, Ruan Ping committed suicide on the South Gate Tower, completing his curtain call as a lord. Ruan Ping's suicide was regrettable. It couldn't be said that Ruan Ping didn't work hard. Ruan Ping was definitely not an ignorant playboy. He had even achieved glorious achievements and stood at the forefront of the struggle. Ruan Ping's fall could only reflect the cruelty of the wilderness once again. The wilderness was like breeding insects. Only the strongest could live to the end and stand at the top of the world. This was a world where the winner took all and the losers lost everything. In the end, there were only a few winners, but there were countless losers who became stepping stones. With Ruan Ping's suicide, the Ruan family officially withdrew from the wilderness. At this point, the 4 major families of Lingnan were all forced to withdraw from the wilderness. The best ending was the Song family, which was only transformed into a large chamber of commerce. The remaining 3 families all ended up in dire straits. The experience of the 4 major families of Lingnan in the game was the epitome of the medium-sized forces in the China region. They first relied on their resource advantage in the game to gain the upper hand in the game. Then, in the cruel competition in the wilderness, more than 90% of them were eliminated because they weren't acclimatized. The ambitions of most of the families vanished in an instant along with the loss of their territories. It was as if they were drawing water with a sieve. There were those crazy ones who exchanged a large amount of achievement points in the real world and lost even more. Earth on Lu provided a chance for players around the world to reshuffle the cards. But not everyone would become the winner in this reshuffle. More than 90% of the players just walked around freely once. Only the few lucky ones could achieve a counterattack by relying on luck or talent and reach the peak of life. As for Ouyang Shua's experience, it wasn't replicable and had no value as a reference. After Ruan Ping's suicide, there was no longer a lord in Baishur City. Even the lord of Baishur City had fled. The allies who received the news were in an uproar. They fought with their lives for a whole day and sacrificed nearly 100,000 brothers, only to be heartlessly abandoned. It was hard to accept. The crowd was agitated and the camp went out of control. That night, a large number of soldiers left the camp and ran to the opposite camp to surrender. Fan Lihua naturally didn't refuse any of them. First, it was one by one, then team by team, and finally it turned into a collective surrender of battalions. For the entire night, the area outside Whitestone City did not stop for a single moment. It was extremely noisy and bustling. The next morning, when the commander of the Allied forces saw that the camp was half empty, he spat out a mouthful of saliva, gritted his teeth, and led the entire army to surrender. The cowardice of the city lords completely chilled the hearts of the generals in the army. It would be foolish to pledge loyalty to such a lord. Rather than that, he might as well seek refuge in the glorious Shanghai city and embark on a new journey on the battlefield. In other words, the alliance was not a complete loser in this battle. As long as they survived, it was a kind of victory. The real losers were the fallen lords and the soldiers who died on the battlefield yesterday. Knowing that the alliance army was going to surrender, Fan Lihua did not dare to delay at all. She secretly contacted the 10,000-year army and got the latter to immediately enter the camp and accept the surrender of the alliance army together. Last night, the follow-up troops of the 10,000-year army had arrived one after another. Fan Lihua did not want to cause any more trouble when the overall situation was already set. In military matters, it was always right to be cautious. As it turned out, Fan Lihua was overthinking. This time, the alliance army was truly sincere in surrendering. In order to avoid being misunderstood by the Shanghai City Army, they even took the initiative to disarm themselves and waited patiently for Shanghai City to reorganize. In the camp, the Alliance Army's commander handed Fan Lihua the Alliance Army's roster and commander seal. Just this alone saved a lot of work for the General Administration of Military Affairs. Because of this, Fan Lihua's impression of the Alliance Army's commander increased greatly. In the battle yesterday, the Alliance Army's commander's command was also commendable and not mediocre. If he was really mediocre, he would not have the ability to ascend to the throne of the Alliance Army's commander. If Ouyang Shuo was here, he would recognize this commander. Speaking of which, this was also a famous historical general. He was none other than the founding general of the Eastern Han Dynasty, Feng Yi. Name, Feng Yi Emperor level, Dynasty, Eastern Han Dynasty identity, none occupation. Special class general loyalty, 65-point commander, 84 martial power, 68 intelligence, 75 politics, 72 specialties. Wise general, increases troop morale by 30, increases troop attack by 20, increases troop supply by 30. Skills, none. Equipment, none. Evaluation. Feng Yi was both talented in literature and military strategy. Not only was he outstanding in battle, but he was also very successful in governing the county. His character was humble and unyielding, and he was not arrogant when claiming credit. It could be said that he was rare and commendable. In history, Feng Yi was a wise general, a scholarly general, skilled in both literature and martial arts. What was even rarer was that Feng Yi had outstanding military achievements, but he was never arrogant and modest. Even in Shanghai City, such a general was rare. Feng Yi was originally the Yingchuan County deputy of the new dynasty. He later submitted to Lu Xiu and fought with him. He defeated Qi Mei, pacified Guanzhong, and helped Lu Xiu establish the Eastern Han Dynasty. After Lu Xiu became emperor, Feng Yi was conferred the title of Great General of the West and Marquis of Yangxia. In the 10th year of Jinwu, he died of illness in the army and was given the title of Marquis of Jidu. In the 3rd year of Emperor Yongping of the Eastern Han Dynasty, Emperor Lu Zhuang ordered people to draw the portraits of 28 generals in Luoyang's Nangong Yuntai Pavilion. They were called the 28 Yuntai generals, corresponding to the 28 lunar mansions. The 28 generals of the cloud platform referred to the 28 generals under Emperor Guangwu of Han, Lu Xiu, who had contributed the most to the unification of the world and the revival of the Han Dynasty. Among them, Feng, Yi, and Tsinpeng made the greatest contributions. The Book of the Later Han Dynasty, Volume 17 said, "There were many generals who made great contributions, but Tsinpeng and Feng were the only ones who made great contributions from the west of Hanggu to the south of Fangcheng. If Feng and Jia did not attack, Duke Xin's loyalty was enough to make the three armies sympathize with the enemy. Thus, he was able to accomplish great things and finally complete the Qing dynasty. From this, one could see Feng Yi's ability. In the wilderness, Feng Yi was originally a general under the command of the Tong County in Chaozhou County. Because of his outstanding talent, he was appointed as the commander of the Allied army. Feng Yi was an upright man. In the battle yesterday, to prevent other generals from accusing him of favoritism, the Tong County's army was sent out in the first wave of attack. After the battle, the Tong County's 6,000 soldiers were almost completely annihilated. Just yesterday, the Tong County was captured by Hua Xubing's army. When the lord of the Tong County saw this, he no longer had any intentions of staying and left Baishu City. If Ruan Ping and the others had not stopped him, Feng Yi would have been taken away. With Feng Yi's cooperation, it became much easier to accept the surrendered army. In the end, a total of 150,000 Allied soldiers surrendered. Just the cavalry alone amounted to 100,000. The price that Fan Lihua's army paid was the death of 20,000 soldiers. After a short pause, Fan Lihua, Shi Wansui, and Wu Lai, who had arrived in the morning, entered Baishu City hand in hand. At this point, the Battle of Baishu City was completely over. Next, they would stay in Baishu City for a short time before continuing on their journey. Shanghai City, the headquarters of the General Military Affairs Department. The glorious results that Fan Lihua's army achieved exceeded the expectations of the General Military Affairs Department. The goal set by the General Military Affairs Department was only to stop 250,000 Allied soldiers. They did not expect to wake up one night and find that the Allied army no longer existed. Du Ruhui had already formed an army reorganization team and was ready to immediately teleport to Zhenhai City before heading to Baishu City to be responsible for reorganizing the 150,000 Allied soldiers who had surrendered. At the same time, the wounded Fan Lihua's army would also rest in Baishu City. First, it was to take the opportunity to replenish the number of soldiers who had died in battle. Second, it was also to guard the 150,000 surrendered soldiers until the reorganization was completed. This reorganization was only a preliminary calculation. The real reorganization of the army would have to wait until the Battle of Lingnan was over before it was unified. Kimming, I'll leave the rest to you. After staying up all night, Ouyang Shua's worried heart was finally at ease. He was ready to go back and catch up on sleep. Don't worry, my lord. In the last half a month, we will definitely be able to conquer the entire Lingnan city. Du Ruhui was not sleepy at all. She was very energetic and excited. It was no wonder that the victory of the Battle of Baishu City was too exciting. Ouyang Shua nodded with a smile. Don't be too hasty. We have to guard against what should be guarded against, especially the Xiangnan province in the north. I heard that they have already sent troops? Yes. Du Ruhui nodded with a smile. He knew what his lord was worried about. When attacking the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, the Shanghai City Army was careless in the case of a great victory. The Xiangnan City-State and the Chuanbei City-State joined forces and seized Guilin County. That was also one of the few blemishes in the war history of Shanghai City. Now that the Xiangnan City-State had marched into Chaozhou County, his lord naturally did not want history to repeat itself. In fact, Du Ruhui thought that there was basically no such possibility. If the other side was rational, after learning about the situation in Baishu City, they would take the initiative to withdraw their troops and not get involved in this muddy water again. After all, today was different from the past. When attacking the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, the Shanghai City Army was pinned down and could not return in time. This time was different. Of the 4 major legions that were originally arranged to annihilate the Allied army, only the Fan Lihua's army was trapped. The other 3 legions did not even have the chance to intervene in the Battle of Baishu City. Needless to say, The Hua Tsubing's army and the Diqing's army were gradually advancing toward Shaozhou County. If the Shaonan city-state really did not know what was good for them and insisted on invading Shaozhou County, Shanghai City would have no scruples this time and directly go to war. Thinking about it, the other side would not be able to gain the slightest advantage from the two famous generals Hua Tsubing and Diqing. Ouyang Shuo was just giving instructions according to the rules. He hoped that the south of rosy clouds would be a little bolder. In that case, Shanghai City would have the opportunity to intervene in the affairs of the Xiangnan city-state. Considering the existence of Zhongliang, this possibility was almost non-existent. Chapter 741. When Ouyang Shuo returned to the mansion, Qing was already waiting for him. Big brother. Qing Er's eyes were red as if she had just cried. Ouyang Shuo frowned and said lightly, Wang Feng refused. He's a stubborn bull. These days, Qing had run into a wall with Wang Feng, and the result was not ideal. Wang Feng had a very strong self-esteem. No matter what Qing said, he was not willing to agree to the marriage when his arm was broken. What can I do? Ouyang Shuo asked. Ouyang Shuo could not force Wang Feng to agree to the marriage with his identity as the emperor. Not to mention that a melon that was forcibly picked would not be sweet. It would also be a blow to the prestige of the protectorate. As the emperor, Ouyang Shuo had to consider the impact in this aspect. Qing made a request that surprised Ouyang Shuo. She said, Big brother, can you temporarily relieve him of his military post and arrange for him to study in the Eastern Fence sword faction? You've given up? No. Qing shook her head, and her eyes were firm. I've also found that with his temper, it's useless to persuade him if he can't be cured. I'll wait until the day he stands up again. Good. Ouyang Shuo looked at the girl in front of him, full of emotion. The magic of love could make people dizzy, and it could also make a person grow up quickly. I'll arrange it. Ouyang Shuo did not hesitate. Thank you, big brother. Qing bowed. Seeing that Ouyang Shuo looked a little tired, she did not disturb him and left. In the next half a month, the battle in the Lingnan region progressed smoothly. The battle in Baisher City shocked the entire China region. The lightning action of Shanghai City made some people with ulterior motives not have time to act, and the battle in the Lingnan region was basically over. Overlord City was one of them. Xiongba had already planned to directly reinforce the Lingnan city-state, but when he learned that Baisher City had fallen, he immediately gave up the idea and turned his energy to instigate a rebellion. Rosy Cloud City also retreated. As Duruhue expected, as soon as they learned about the battle in Baisher City, the temporarily organized coalition army in the south of Rosy Cloud City immediately withdrew from Shaozhou County. Then, Xiangnan City-State further strengthened the border garrison. The entire China region was watching in awe as Shanghai City rose to power once again. In less than a month, it had taken over half of the province. As the various factions withdrew, the Imperial Guard Army, the City Guard Army, the 2nd Dragon Stallion Army, and the 2 legions of the Stalwart Tiger Army, totaling 350,000 soldiers, began to launch a carpet assault on the 3 counties. There was not a single blind spot in the 3 counties. Wherever the army passed, the major cities surrendered at the mere sight of them. Any stubborn power was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot under the iron hooves of the vast army, and they were all transformed into powder. The 3 counties were in a state of panic. As the war neared its end, the well-prepared protectorate of the southern border dispatched a large number of officials from the various counties to the 3 counties to take over the cities, stabilize the hearts of the people, and restore civil affairs. For this expansion, the Southern Border Protectorate had prepared for half a year and gathered a large number of officials, waiting for the end of the war to show off their skills. Shanghai City, Protectorate of the Southern Border. In his study, Ouyang Shuo and the 4 directors of the General Administration were discussing the personnel arrangements for the governors of the 3 counties. Song Wen, the governor of Seakeeper City, would be promoted to the governor of Jiaozhou County. There was no objection to this arrangement. First, Song Wen's achievements in the battle against Seakeeper City were obvious to all, so his promotion to governor was within reason. Second, Seakeeper City was still under Song Wen's name. In order to maintain the teleportation formation there, Song Wen could not leave Seakeeper City or Jiaozhou County. This time, Song Wen could be considered to have picked up a huge bargain. Jiaozhou County was not only the largest county of the Southward Province, but also the largest of the counties of Shanghai City, even larger than the recently annexed Kunming County. Moreover, Jiaozhou County had an excellent geographical location, crisscrossing rivers and a natural harbor like Jiaozhou Harbor. It had a solid foundation, abundant natural resources, and a dense population. It could be said to be the heart of the Southward Province. If not for Seakeeper City, no matter how capable Song Wen was, he would not have been able to get promoted to this level. Besides Jiaozhou County, there was also Chaozhou County and Shaozhou County. According to the battle reports from the front lines, when they conquered the counties, they did not find any outstanding historical officials. There were only a few insignificant officials who were only qualified to be the prefectural magistrate. Therefore, the 3 governors had to be appointed by the Protectorate of Southern Border. After Xiao He's suggestion, Huaguang, the head of the tax bureau under the General Administration of Finance, stood out from the other officials and was appointed as the governor of Shaozhou County. Huaguang was an outstanding talent, so it was indeed a waste of his talent to be the head of the tax bureau. Ouyang Shua had long intended to send Huaguang out, but he had not found an opportunity. Since Xiao He took the initiative to suggest it, Ouyang Shua did not stop him and went along with the arrangement. Huaguang was talented in both literature and martial arts. With him overseeing Shaozhou County, they could better monitor their neighbors in the north. Shaozhou County was an active volcano that could erupt at any time. With Huaguang, a historical general, overseeing the county, Ouyang Shua could rest assured. Although Xiao He's suggestion was appropriate, it might not be without selfish motives. Huaguang was born in the Western Han Dynasty and could be said to be of the same lineage as Xiao He, the first prime minister of the Western Han Dynasty. The two of them had a close relationship. To Xiao He, promoting Huaguang was a win-win situation. Ouyang Shua was very clear about this, but he adopted a tacit agreement. He was against his subordinates forming cliques for personal gain, but he would not go to the extreme and forbid any form of connections. In ancient officialdom, it was difficult to eliminate cliques. Ouyang Shua's attitude towards this was that officials could connect openly, but they could not secretly form cliques for personal gain. The last county governor had a difficult labor. After searching through all the important officials in the Protectorate of Southern Border, there were some who could become a governor. For example, Zhang Tingyu, Su Zhe, Pei Yun, and Xiahou Dun were all qualified. It was just that these important officials held important positions and could not leave. Just when the discussion was in a difficult position, the head of the Finance Bureau, Fan Li, suddenly spoke. "My lord, I have a suggestion. Please speak." Ouyang Shua's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. Ever since the Saint of Commerce Fan Li joined Shanghai City, other than speaking out on the territory's financial affairs, he had kept a low profile on other matters. One must know that Fan Li's ability was not limited to business. He was the cream of the crop in both literature and martial arts, and his strategy was even better than that of ordinary strategists. Ouyang Shua guessed that Fan Li was keeping a low profile because he was using the Southwest University China Hall to make up for his lack of knowledge. After all, Fan Li was born in the Spring and Autumn Warring States period, which was far from China's most complete and prosperous era. As for how to govern a territory, Fan Li still had a lot of knowledge to learn and assimilate. Secondly, Fan Li was probably observing Shanghai City and Ouyang Shua, the Lord. This showed how cautious he was. Now that Fan Li suddenly spoke out on the territory's financial affairs, did it mean that he had truly acknowledged Ouyang Shua as the Lord and was prepared to truly show off his abilities in Shanghai City? That was why Ouyang Shua felt a little excited. A strange light flashed in the eyes of the other 3 bureau chiefs. All the bureau chiefs present were shrewd people, so they were naturally able to capture the hidden message. What kind of impact would Fan Li's sudden, high-profile impact on Shanghai City's officialdom? They would have to think about this question carefully. Fan Li was calm and said, "According to the Lord, the territory will be officially established next year, and Shanghai City will be the future capital. Since that's the case, some things have to be prepared in advance, such as the matter of Jili. I think it's time to make the entire Lianzhou County part of Shanghai City's Jili." Jili referred to the area directly under the capital. The term originated from the Ming Dynasty and lasted until the Qing Dynasty. Even in modern society, there was still a similar concept. In the Qing Dynasty, the governor of Jili was ranked first among the 8 governors in the country, and only important officials could take up the post. Previously, the surrounding counties of Shanghai City had all been brought under the jurisdiction of Shanghai City. Fan Li's proposal this time was obviously a step forward on this basis, and the entire Lianzhou Basin would be directly under the jurisdiction of Shanghai City, and Lianzhou County would no longer be established separately. I second the motion. Making Lianzhou County part of Jili in advance will also make it easier to allocate resources in the Lianzhou Basin and speed up the construction of Shanghai City, so that we can reach the population limit earlier. The one who spoke was Wei Yang. As the head of the Internal Affairs Bureau, he was in charge of the Civil Affairs Bureau, and the population issue was under his jurisdiction. Naturally, Wei Yang was also responsible for the migration of Shanghai City's population. That's right. As the population of Shanghai City increases rapidly, the demand for agricultural products and other resources increases. The supplies from the surrounding counties can no longer meet the needs of Shanghai City. Now that we have to allocate resources from Lianzhou County, we can break through this boundary by making Lianzhou County part of Jili City earlier. Xiao He seconded. As a result, only the head of the Military Affairs Bureau, Du Ruhui, did not speak. If Fan Li's low profile was said to be a silent observation, then Du Ruhui's low profile was really low profile. This head of the Military Affairs Bureau, who had extraordinary decision-making power, would basically not speak during the discussion as long as it did not involve military affairs. She would always play the role of a listener. A soldier should not interfere with the officialdom. This was the bottom line that Du Ruhui drew for herself. Ouyang Shuo smiled and readily accepted the good advice. He said, "Since everyone has reached a consensus, then this matter is decided. From now on, Lianzhou County will be abolished, and all the land in the Lianzhou Basin will be transferred to Jili City under the direct management of Shanghai Magistrate Zhang Wenzhong." Ouyang Shuo did not intend to make Zhang Wenzhong, the Shanghai magistrate, change his position for the time being. What Ouyang Shuo was most satisfied with about Zhang Wenzhong was that he had not been involved in any faction so far. My lord is wise. None of the bureau chiefs were surprised by Jun Shang's straightforwardness. After finalizing the matter of Jili, Ouyang Shuo returned to the main topic. He looked at Fan Li and said with a smile, "Does Minister Fan mean to recommend the former Lianzhou County Magistrate, Wei Ran, to take up the post of Chaozhou County Magistrate?" Chapter 742. I only suggested the establishment of Jili Commandery. The appointment and removal of personnel will be decided by the Emperor. Fan Li avoided answering the Emperor's question. Old fox. Ouyang Shuo sighed. Fan Li was as cautious as ever. Even though he started to speak out on territory matters, he was still unwilling to get involved in the most sensitive personnel matters. Although Fan Li said this, Wei Ran's appointment was quickly approved. He was relieved of his Lian Prefecture Prefectural Magistrate position and transferred to Chao Prefecture Prefectural Magistrate. Now that Wei Ran was transferred out of the capital, some people would probably heave a sigh of relief. Although Wei Ran was good and capable, he was a little greedy. During his tenure as Lian Prefecture Prefectural Magistrate, his greed started to show. Shunbu Hai reported this to Ouyang Shuo many times. The people's evaluation of Wei Ran was also mixed. Even Xiao He had some complaints about Wei Ran. Ouyang Shuo was magnanimous to keep such an official in the capital. Wei Ran's transfer could be considered as a warning to him. On the 8th of the 10th month, the appointment of the 3 prefectural magistrates was announced. Other than the 3 prefectural magistrates, the successor of Huoguang as the tax bureau chief was also announced. This person was recommended by Fan Li, a top disciple of Shang clan, and had always been an important assistant to Huoguang. As the news was announced, the territory was in an uproar again. When Song clan received the news, they were naturally overjoyed and swept away their previous gloominess. Of course, clan head Song Tianxiong did not forget to warn the clan members not to be arrogant and willful. They could not use Song clan's power to seek personal gains, or else they would be courting death. Song Tianxiong vaguely sensed from his daughter Song Jia that Ouyang Shuo probably controlled a secret intelligence agency that monitored the officials. From this, Song Tianxiong thought of the famous embroidered uniform guards in history. Thinking of this, Song Tianxiong's heart turned cold. It could be imagined that if Song clan committed a crime, with Ouyang Shuo's incorruptibility, no one could save Song clan. The 2 brothers Song and Song Wu had already become the core pillars of Song clan. Old Master Song had even expressed his admiration and favoritism towards these 2 grandsons on different occasions. Yuan clan's defeat made Song Tianxiong and the rest happy, but thinking back, they felt a chill in their hearts. In reality, that little brat had already grown into a giant that they had to look up to and even revere. Even in the Song family, even Old Master Song, Ouyang Shuo, didn't dare to call him by his name. Some people rejoiced, while others were worried. The little girl, Hua Qingjun, was very unhappy because she was going to move to Shaozhou County with her father. As such, he could no longer go to the protectorate of the southern border to play with Big Sister Binger. More importantly, she couldn't see her brother Jun. When it was time to leave, Ouyang Shuo personally saw Huoguang and his family off. Hua Chengjun cried his heart out, which was very lovable. When Huoguang saw this, he could only smile bitterly at Jun Mo apologetically. Looking at Hua Chengjun's displeasure, Wei Ran looked a little lonely. Wei Ran could be considered as the most experienced county governor in the territory, but now he was being ridden over by Song and the other juniors. How could he not feel lonely? Wei Ran was not a fool. He had already thought about the day when Lianzhou County would be abolished and transferred to Zhili. He had always yearned for the position of the prefectural governor of Zhili. He didn't expect to suffer a crushing defeat in the competition with Zhangzhou. Although he was lonely, Wei Ran didn't dare to complain. Wei Ran also realized that his little tricks in Lianzhou County had probably been seen by Jun Mo. Moreover, his son-in-law Bai Qi was no longer the only divine general in the territory, so his authority was greatly reduced. Moreover, with Bai Qi's character, he wouldn't ask his father-in-law to mediate anything. Therefore, Wei Ran could only obediently go to Chaozhou County to take up the post. Ouyang Shuo didn't really give up on Wei Ran. Before leaving, Ouyang Shuo told Wei Ran to manage Chaozhou County well. As long as he made contributions, it was not impossible for him to return to the center of power in the future. Thank you, Jun. Wei Ran was filled with emotion. October 10th, Baisher City. The Battle of Lingnan was completely over. Ouyang Shuo brought Du Ruhui and other big shots of the General Administration of Military Affairs to Baisher City to preside over a new round of army reorganization. He chose Baisher City for 2 reasons. Firstly, the 150,000 Allied troops were settled here. Secondly, this place was of great significance. The 6 generals, Sun Bin, Hua Tsubing, Shi Wansui, Ilai, Di Qing, and Fan Lihua, left their respective troops and gathered in Baisher City to report the results of the battle. Fan Lihua's corps was the biggest contributor to the battle. They captured 150,000 Allied troops and lost 20,000. The other 5 corps each suffered about 4,000 to 5,000 casualties and captured more than 90,000 field army soldiers. They basically wiped out all the field armies in the 3 counties. Apart from that, there are also garrison troops in various places. According to preliminary statistics, there were no less than 50,000 people. However, compared to the field army, the quality of the soldiers in the local garrison troops was a level lower. It was not suitable for them to be integrated into the field army. There was nothing much to say about the garrison troops, other than the 3 guard regiments. The rest of the soldiers were either transferred to reserve duty or arranged for retirement. The focus of the army reorganization this time was the 240,000 field army prisoners of war. After deducting the losses of the major corps, there were still 3 corps to be reorganized. Before coming to Baisha City, Ouyang Shuo had already made some plans on how to arrange these 3 corps. First, he would form the 2nd Corps of the Imperial Guards. The main task was to select 70,000 of the most elite cavalry from the 100,000 Allied cavalry troops to form the 2nd Corps of the Imperial Guards. The Allied troops were the best troops in the Lingnan city. They were well-trained and had excellent quality soldiers. They could even be directly integrated into the Imperial Guards. This time, 70,000 of the cavalry were selected from 100,000. It could be said that they were the best of the best. The corps would be reorganized and trained according to the historical standards of the Tiger Leopard Cavalry. The Tiger Leopard Cavalry was originally the Imperial Guard system and could be said to be of the same origin. The commander of the Imperial Guards, Hua Xiubing, was best at cavalry battles. However, the conditions were limited. The original Imperial Guards only had 2 cavalry regiments, and one of them was a special cavalry regiment called the Ironback Beast Cavalry Regiment. The formation of the 2nd Corps of the Imperial Guards was undoubtedly to make up for this shortcoming. At the same time, it also gave the genius General Hua Xiubing more room to perform. The commander of the Tiger Leopard Cavalry, Ouyang Shu, designated Ma Chao, who was still studying. At the same time, the historical commander of the Tiger Leopard Cavalry, Chao Chun, was designated as the deputy commander and the commander of the 1st Corps. Ma Chao and Chao Chun worked together and supervised each other. Other than these 2, Ma Chao's younger brother, Ma Xiao, was appointed as the commander of the 3rd Corps. The original commander of the 1st Corps of the Imperial Guards, Lin Yi, was transferred to the 2nd Corps and became the commander of the 2nd Corps. With Lin Yi, a local general, it would be easier for the 2nd Corps to integrate into the Imperial Guard system. The position that Lin Yi left vacant would be taken over by the old General Ma Tong. The 5 horses of Shiliang were all experts in cavalry battles. Ouyang Shuo naturally wanted to make the best use of their talents. As for the remaining 2 commanders of the 2nd Corps of the Imperial Guards, they would be directly promoted from generals who had been demoted. The Allied army had no lack of capable generals. After all, they were the top generals of their respective territories. Shanghai City's use of people was never based on birth. Speaking of which, didn't the current army expand step by reorganizing the prisoners of war? Shanghai City had long stopped recruiting new soldiers from their territories. This was also the wilderness, where wars were frequent, which was why Shanghai City did this. Every time a war broke out, not only would there be no casualties, but they would also gain a large number of prisoners of war. This model could not be imitated by other territories. The second was to form the 3rd Corps of the Leopard Army. The Soaring Dragon Army, the Stalwart Tiger Army, and the Leopard Army had 3 corps. Only the Leopard Army currently only had 2 corps. Ouyang Shuo naturally wouldn't forget about the Leopard Army in this expansion. The commander of the 3rd Corps of the Leopard Army was Ouyang Shuo's former commander, the old General Feng Yi. One reason was that Feng Yi's strength was enough to lead an entire corps. The second reason was to use Feng Yi's promotion to pacify the surrendered armies. At the same time, Chao Hong and Ma Tai, the 2 valiant generals who were still in training, would take up the positions of division commanders of the 1st and 2nd Divisions of the 3rd Corps respectively after completing their training. The last of the 5 horses of Shiliang, Ma Dai, would be assigned to the 3rd Corps of the Dragon Stalwart Army, the Zhang Liao Army. He would be the vice commander and commander of the 1st Corps. Since the Zhang Liao Army was being reorganized, Ouyang Shuo naturally had to arrange for a general to balance out Zhang Liao's existence. The third was to form the 4th Corps of the Dragon Stalwart Army. Logically speaking, this was the home field of the Stalwart Tiger Army, and the last corps spot should have been reserved for them. Ouyang Shua had made this arrangement out of strategic considerations. With the entirety of the Lingnan province under Shanghai City's rule, the territory would be bordered by the Minnan province to the east and the Jiangchuan province to the northeast. The overall security situation would be greatly improved. The only threat would come from the Xiangnan province to the north. The Yunnan province, where the Dragon Stalwart Army was located, would become the next main battlefield of the territory. The three corps of the Dragon Stalwart Army would be somewhat overstretched, so they needed reinforcements. After all these considerations, Ouyang Shua decided to prioritize the establishment of the Fourth Corps of the Dragon Stalwart Army. Ouyang Shua chose the young General Luo Shixin to be the commander of the Fourth Corps. Luo Shixin's talent had always been extraordinary, but he had died an untimely death, which was why he had not made a name for himself in history. In the last 2 years, under Bai Qi's personal tutelage, Luo Shixin had rapidly matured into a rare great general of cavalry. Moreover, Luo Shixin was a veteran general of Shanghai City with outstanding achievements. There would be almost no resistance in the army if Luo Shixin became the commander of the Fourth Corps. At the same time, Ouyang Shua also arranged for the fierce General Xiahou Yuan to be the vice commander of the Fourth Corps, as well as the commander of the First Corps to assist Luo Shixin. With these two, and Bai Qi as the commander, there should be no major problems. At this point, all the vacancies in the three corps had been taken care of. The 5 horses of Shiliang, the Chao brothers, Xiahou Yuan, and the other generals of the 3 countries had all taken their places. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.